welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of Whick TV, the Whick and Tali show. Okay, today you get another one. I know, she's been here a lot, but she's going to keep being here because she is my co-host for this weekly show. We're going to talk about something interesting today, something that I've been kind of percolating in my head for a while, and I wanted to have a discussion about it. And these wonderful individuals have agreed to come on and talk about it with us. That is anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Is there a real difference between these two things? Is anti-Zionism simply a mask used by anti-Semites, or are they distinct and separate things that should be kept separate? That's the discussion today. We got some great people to talk about it. I'm going to give them the mic to introduce themselves, tell people who they are, what they do, why we should listen to them, and their thoughts on the show. We're going to give it first to Mr. Brian Knuckles. Am I saying that correctly?
You got it. Knuckles. Yep, like the appendage.
Great.
Yep, I'm Brian.
Tell people who you are and what your thoughts are. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm Brian Knuckles. I am I call myself an empathic journalist. I do writing on the media platform Hesitation Media. I'm a democratic socialist affiliated with the DSA. And my main argument today is going to be that the Zionist project mystifies the true thing we should be focused on to get peace, which is that elite interests and working class interests are different, and elites use religion and culture as a way to trick people. And that's my argument.
Okay,
and I can't wait to discuss.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Thank you for being here. I'm sure it'll be a great show. Ali, Sociologic Ali. Tell people who you are, what you do, etc.
What's up, guys? I go by Sociologic on Twitter, 2 L's. Why you should listen to me? I mean, you can determine that on your own after the panel. But so my issue is that I think anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism should be two distinct things, because I believe they are. For I am a bit of an anti-Zionist. Zionism, I'm not a big fan. I'm Lebanese, so it affects me a little bit differently. And specifically, I was in Lebanon in 2006 when the war happened, so I have like slightly different views of tactics by armies and so on and so forth. But the broader issue is that anti-Semites do use anti-Zionism as their mask. It's kind of shitty, because then it makes people like me be wrapped up with people like them, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair to me and my views. But we can discuss that tonight. So thank you for having me, Whick.
Oh, thank you for being here. Tali, I know you're my co-host, but remind people who you are and what your thoughts here and all that.
Yeah, sure. So I am Tali Bots, the co-host of the Whick and Tali show until a better name comes upon us. Yeah, I mean, Whick and I are never truly impartial moderators, right? We'll be part of the conversation, but I am a Zionist. I think that a lot of anti-Zionism has anti-Semitic features, is sort of anti-Semitic. Although I will caveat that with, I think most people, even if they fall into that category where some of their anti-Zionist activism or rhetoric is anti-Semitic, I don't think most anti-Zionists are motivated by hatred of Jews, conscious or otherwise. But I think in effect, that's the hostile effect that it has on Jews for whether that's fair or not. So yeah, I look forward to talking to you all about it.
Okay, it should be fun. And last but certainly not least, first time on my show, Yuda. I hope I'm saying that right. Go ahead.
You are. Hi, I'm Yuda. I post on X. I live in New York City. I guess that's about it. And I'm here to, I guess, argue, at least in my view, that anti-Zionism is just the latest iteration of about 2,000 years of anti-Judaic praxis, and that each iteration follows the same mimetic pattern of incorporating, mythologizing, and then demonizing the agency and emancipation of Jews.
Okay, I guess let's start with this question. Is it possible, right? Let's set Zionism aside for just a moment. Is it possible to be critical of Israel without being anti-Semitic? And when and where do you cross that line from I'm critical of Israel and not anti-Semitic to I'm critical of Israel and anti-Semitic? It's an open discussion. Go ahead, please.
I think it's
First
difficult.
here.
Wait.
One
real
at a time. I love the
I think-
energy.
I
Usually,
think that's a difficult line.
yeah. Go
I think
ahead.
it's a difficult
Ollie,
line
then we'll go
because,
Yuda, then we'll go Brian. That's the order.
In times of like tension, right? Especially in times of war, people are going to be judged by their like respective like homeland countries, right? So like Ukrainians are going to be like American Ukrainians are going to be judged for like us giving money to Ukraine, where they're going to eat like some of that guilt. Russians, so on and so forth. It's going to be like this whole play. And the issue is that like Israel stands for like the Jewish people, right? And then like the Jewish ethnicity just engulfs in. So it's like, it's just, I don't know. Once you start saying that the people should be like killed or removed, or the same, you start iterating like, oh, like Hitler was right. When you start bringing in the tropes, that's when I think this like anti-Semitism comes in. But I think if you're being critical of the government actions, I think that's fine. And even like, I don't know, that'd be it for me.
It is an open discussion.
I know someone
Chris.
was supposed
Go
to
ahead.
go next.
Oh, if I can, yes. So I think really I'd like to break my answer into two pieces.
Go ahead.
The first is that yes, absolutely, you can criticize Israel without being anti-Semitic. It's very easy. I do it all the time. I despise Bibi. I despise Likud. I despise Ben Gvir. There are all kinds of politicians in Israel that I absolutely despise. I criticize them all the time. I don't believe I'm anti-Semitic. But I think much more importantly, I don't think that this is a question that properly frames the debate. Because anti-Zionism is not, in its essence, a criticism of Israel, and it's not a criticism of Israeli policies. It is a belief that Jews do not have the right to emancipation, to national emancipation, within any land. It's a continuation and a reformulation of anti-Semitism, which formed in the 19th and 20th centuries, which was the belief that Jews did not have the right to emancipation within the nation states, within Germany, within Western Europe, that Jews were not allowed to experience that emancipation, and so anti-Semitism formed to deny them that. And that was just the latest iteration of previous forms of Jew hate. We didn't really have terms for them because there were no scholars discussing this at the time. If you look at medieval Europe, Jews were denied any kind of emancipation within the feudal system under kings, underneath the Christian theology, and inside of the Islamic world as well. So I think the question of whether you can criticize Israel without being anti-Semitic is really irrelevant to the question of whether anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, because anti-Zionism is an ideology. It's not a set of words. It's not a set of criticisms that you might have. It is a totalizing ideology that views Jews and Israel as playing a very specific role in the world.
Go ahead.
So like
Brian.
when you say Zionism is just, I'm sorry, like it's the when some anti-Zionist is against anti-emancipation of Jews. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
It can't just
It's
be like
a denial of Jewish parity.
It can't just be like I don't like the way that they went about forming the nation state that is
that's
Israel.
A criticism of Israel. That's not anti-Zionism. Anti-Zionism, I mean, definitionally, anti-Zionism is in its essence a denial of the legitimacy of the existence of a Jewish state.
Okay,
But
I
as
think
soon
like
as you
the
enter
average
into the
person,
realm of anti,
the average person hears Zionist and they think, well, Israel should exist there. Like that's what I think
Yes,
they
that's
believe
exactly what
a
I-
Zionist is, right? And so Zionism is the belief that Israel should exist in this specific nation state area, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by a nation-state area, but yes.
So
it's the
like
belief that
where
should
Israel
exist,
is
and
today, that's where it
specifically
should
in the ancestral
exist,
homeland
and that's
of
what
Jews.
people think Zionism is the belief that it deserves to exist there specifically, right?
They believe Zionism is the belief that Jews are a nation, a people, an am in Hebrew, the word that we've used to describe ourselves for a little over 2,000 years, and also that we have, in the same way as all other nations and peoples, a right to self-determination. And lastly, that we have that right to self-determination in the cradle of where our peoplehood was formed, which is Israel.
So the right to self-determination on the specific place, on the specific land. So like
Definitionally, it is a denial. Anti-Zionism is a denial of that view. It's not a criticism, because you can criticize, I can criticize the American
what does that have to
government
do with like
besides
emancipate?
Trump.
Like you can Jewish people should be liberated everywhere. I don't think Israel should exist where it is today. So like I don't know how that like makes me anti-Semitic. I don't think the way they went about it was good. I don't think the formation is good. I don't think what they're doing now is good. I think there's a bunch of issues that come with like its placement. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of issues with it. But where's the anti-Semitism though?
Well, I think let's take this in, again, two parts. I think the first is it's really interesting what you said, that you believe that Jews should be emancipated everywhere. And
Yeah,
I
they
think
have to be
fascinatingly, that is
liberated
a-
everywhere,
Hold on, let him
yeah,
finish. Hold on, you got to
That's
let
a
him get through
core-
his thoughts. Go ahead, please.
That's a core component of anti-Zionism, which is the belief that Jews are not a legitimate people. That we should have emancipation everywhere, not within our own land that we are able to control for ourselves, that we do not have a right to
No,
self-determination.
you can have your own land. I just don't think that I don't like the placement of it.
So you would have.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Tali.
Well, the only land where Jews would not be colonizers if they went and self-determined would be the historic homeland of the Jews, where the entire culture revolves around and where it was born. I think something that's
I
going to
mean,
be important, we're going to get caught up in this during this conversation, and,
yeah.
and herein lies a lot of the problem, is we all mean different things when we're saying Zionism and anti-Zionism. And so, Yuda, I know what you're saying, and I agree with you from the Jewish perspective. And I think it is fair to describe much of modern anti-Zionism, especially contemporary anti-Zionism, as an ideology sort of against a contrived Zionism, not how we are self-defining Zionism, right? And like you said, it's sort of a totalizing ideology that they perceive Zionism to be. But it's not fair to say that every person who calls themselves anti-Zionist is against the self-determination of the Jewish people, or even in that land, which again is the problem, because truly everyone who's using these words means something different. You have people who call themselves anti-Zionists but say that they're for a two-state solution, which according to my definition would definitionally make that person a Zionist. But I think to answer you more specifically, Ali, what makes it anti-Semitic? I think part of the question when we're looking at criticism of Israel is how sort of consistent that person's interest is in other, what they might consider imperial states or nation states or something like this. So having double standards specifically on the Jewish homeland and not applying that standard to other lands that have been colonized by your definition or are committing war crimes well above and beyond what is happening in Israel today or has ever happened in that land. And people who spend all of their time focusing on Israel to the exclusion of other nations, I think that's a pretty good argument that there's some other motivating force at play.
I want to let
I think
Ollie
that's fair.
respond real
Well,
quick, and then I want
yeah.
Brian to get in because Brian's been trying. So we're gonna go Ollie, then Brian. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think after Brian, I would like to, since I think I'm going to be the only anti-Zionist on this panel specifically, we can probably talk about specifically my views and what for a minute. But yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of people who have no connection to the region. That's the clearest way you can kind of spot the difference between an anti-Semite and just your anti-Zionist. So that's why I'm not coming at it from an abrasive way. I think I don't know if Discord's freezing, but I'm frozen on camera. But I'm not coming at this from an abrasive way. I am going to be coming at this just more questioning, right? And more willing to have a conversation. But yeah, I have a little bit more connection to the area and the region and why I feel the way I feel. But you can go off, Brian.
If you're talking, we can't hear you, Brian.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can now.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to say, depending on what definition we use, I would definitely I consider myself anti-Zionist. However, I think the modern definition that most scholars and people I've read, initially Zionism was the establishment of a state, and it would be an extremely fringe view to think that the state should be removed. And now it's the development and the protection of the Jewish state, even post 67 borders. And being an anti-Zionist means you have a principled stance against that, including what's happening in Gaza, etc. Secondly, you would have to answer, I think a major problem this argument has that anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism is, why are there so many Jews that are anti-Zionists? The strongest voices, some of the strongest voices.
Hold on, let Brian finish, then we're going to go Yuda.
Some of the strongest voices, anti-Zionist voices, are Jewish peace activists. And we don't see black KKK members. That would be absurd. Not to the extent. Not to the extent. That's a ridiculous.
Is that KKK?
Yeah, that's a.
Oh, sorry, she's worse than KKK. So.
No.
I think what
You can not like her views.
It's a completely appropriate response. Obviously, you can have people who are racist against their race or their people who are from that people group. I mean, Karl Marx being a shining example. He's one of the most preeminent anti-Semites that we have to look at, and he was Jewish. So obviously, you can be Jewish and anti-Semitic. So the existence of anti-Zionist Jews does not negate the possibility for anti-Zionism to largely be an anti-Semitic movement. But you make a good point. There are a lot of anti-Zionist Jews because anti-Zionism was only ever a Jewish movement, right? Because like you said, Zionism really was the creation and establishment of the state of Israel, which is why I find the word so troublesome in the modern day. I frankly think Jews should stop using it because it just confuses things. There is no Zionism right now in Israel. There are different political parties. There is an established country. There is a people. There are different factions and all of this among it. But there is no, to call it Zionism is almost like to other it and make it more special than any other country. Every country existing in the modern era is, securing their borders and continuing to survive. But Israel has no duty above any other country to prove its right to continue to exist. But yes, anti-Zionism was a Jewish movement at the start because it was Jews who were concerned about how to deal with anti-Semitism that they were facing. And so you had the Zionists who felt that they needed to be able to establish self-determination and fight for themselves, basically, be in control of their sovereignty. And you had anti-Zionist Jews who were largely assimilationists, who felt that Jews needed to remain where they were, and that was the best way to forge a Jewish future. What most anti-Zionists who reference anti-Zionist Jews leave out is the fact that large majority of the anti-Zionist Jews either came to be Zionist Jews by ending up in Israel by necessity themselves, or dying or being murdered for remaining in the parts of the world where they did.
Direct
And
response.
if I can
to this.
interject,
A
just
direct, no. Direct response. Direct
Up with
response.
my
I
camera.
need a direct response.
Go ahead, Brian.
The idea that if you say you're not Zionist in modern Israeli politics, you're marginal. So there's just a left party that dissolved under a controversy. I can't remember their name because I read it a few days ago. But modern Israeli politics, saying that there's no Zionism is an absurd claim. It just shows you're not paying attention to modern Israeli.
No, Zionism literally doesn't. It has no functional meaning in the modern day when the state of Israel is already established. You're right, especially in the modern era, and by modern era I mean like since the mid-aughts, let's say.
Yeah.
Israelis self-identify as
That's
Zionists.
what we're talking about. We're not talking.
Has had a resurgence, but there. You said
This
it
is a
yourself.
conversation in
If there's
2025, so
one
it's modern day
one
Zionism.
fringe group who is declaring themselves anti-Zionist and they are marginal, yes. But you sort of make the point there because then everyone else is a Zionist and they all have very different plans for what they want the future of the country to look like. It's an exceptionalism that we don't give to other countries that are already in existence. And Jews don't do ourselves any favors by continuing to use the word because, again, I don't think it's necessary. We already have the word Jew, Israeli, all of these things.
It's useful because there's policies, and anti-Zionism is a policy critique, not like Yuta said. It's a policy critique of settlements, expansion, having colonies.
I think
That's
the most
Hold on,
fringe
Tali.
definition.
Let's
of
let Yuta
Zionism,
respond
though.
real quick.
I think it's really important to be clear, Brian, because I don't want to be, I guess, maybe aggressive, but you're saying something that's a little bit deceptive in two parts. So the first is that you're saying that anti-Zionism doesn't call for the dissolution of the state of Israel. That you don't. I have no idea what your personal beliefs are, but it is a fringe view among anti-Zionists that Israel should continue to exist as a Jewish state. That's just a incontrovertible fact. That is what anti-Zionism calls for. Google
Zionism right now. Google Zionism. Just Google.
Brian, look at the mission. Brian, look in the mission statement of any single anti-Zionist group. This is just undeniably correct. The overwhelming majority of self-defined anti-Zionists are against Israel remaining as a Jewish state.
Yes, it's so undeniable. I'm not even going to.
You are called a Zionist. Yeah, if you are literally a far, not even Jewish, but if you are just like a random American, right, who is super sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, but you believe in a two-state solution, you are labeled a quote-unquote liberal Zionist. The anti-Zionist movement is almost almost the same thing as Israel should not exist. So, quote unquote, one state solution where there is no longer a Jewish state in the region.
And just
sorry,
for housekeeping,
continue what I was saying.
just real
yeah.
quick, housekeeping. Ali has to restart it. Oh, there he is. I just want to let you know that he
So,
didn't ditch
I
us.
think
Complete what I was saying.
we need to make a-
Hold on.
issue,
Hold
Brian,
on.
with what you were-
Yuda,
Yeah,
we're
it's a
gonna go
different
Yuda, then we're gonna go Brian. So Yuda, then Brian.
The other issue, Brian, with what you're saying is that you just said that Tali made the points that Zionism is no longer relevant in Israel. I find myself actually greatly disagreeing with Tali.
Yeah,
but you made the
that's
point.
absurd.
In fact, I know you made the point that it isn't. You made the point, in fact, that anyone who would identify as an anti-Zionist in Israel would immediately be completely removed from the political scene. For the most part,
That's true.
we do have anti-Zionists within our political system. Yet
Marginal.
there are literally anti-Zionist parties within the Knesset in Israel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ram, with the Arab list in Israel. There are
they're
anti-Zionist
marginal.
parties. Okay, they exist. So they do exist within
Yeah.
the political system. So what you
I
just
agree.
said is false. But much more
No, I didn't.
importantly,
They're marginal.
what you said that was maliciously deceptive is that you said that anti-Zionism is a policy critique while simultaneously acknowledging that the entire political framework of Israel is Zionist. That's not a policy critique. That's a critique of the entire state. That's a critique of the system. That's the critique of an existence. And I think much more importantly, what we're getting at here is that there is a big issue with the framing of this conversation, and I find myself oddly enough disagreeing with Tali, who is supposed to be on my side. Not that we're on different sides, but I find myself disagreeing with, I guess, everyone in terms of the framing. I don't believe that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I think that's a ludicrous statement. What I do believe is that there's a concept called anti-Judaic praxis, which is the actions that have been taken over the last few thousand years to oppress, harm, and otherwise deny rights to Jews. And that this praxis takes the form in which it seizes onto some act of Jewish agency, whether that be Jewish refusal to convert to Christianity or Islam, or whether that be Jewish engagements with the financial and economic systems in Europe in the 18th through 20th centuries, or whether that be the Jewish seizing of national self-determination in Israel in the 20th century. It seizes on these acts of agency, and then it mythologizes them. It forms a simulacrum of these acts. It creates something that has no correlation to reality, but which exists only within the Arendtian ideology of anti-Zionism. And then from there, it demonizes these acts, and then it forms this totalizing ideology at which Jews are the center of all evils in the world, where Zionism is the source of, I believe it was you actually, Brian, at the beginning, who said that Zionists are the ones that are interfering with your democratic socialist dreams, right? That we are the ones interfering with the overthrow of the means of production, right? The seizing of the means of production by your compatriots. I think that in its very essence, what anti-Zionism is just the latest iteration of the Jewish question, which, although it was only that term was only coined by Bruno Bauer in the 19th century, I mean, it really fundamentally describes all elements of anti-Judaic praxis, which is that it's not a question, but it's an ideology of Jewishness as harmful to humanity as a whole. And when Jews became emancipated within Europe, it responded with anti-Semitism, which was an attempt to distance and to differentiate from previous versions of Jew hate. There were endless writings by journalists, academics within Germany about how anti-Semitism was so enlightened and noble, that it was the most advanced form of social justice, it would never advocate for the same kind of hatreds that Christians had previously advocated for against Jews. It was completely distinguished and separate from these. And yet it incorporated into itself the memes from these previous, and I'm using memes really in the formal sense, not in like an online meme, the memes of these previous iterations of anti-Judaic praxis. It incorporated them into itself with some novelty to differentiate. That's always the essentializing factor of anti-Judaic praxis, is that there is some differentiating factor so as to be able to claim a separation from previous ideologies. And anti-Zionism,
just real quick, land your plane, Yuda. We do got to get the other people some time.
You're gish galloping. Okay, so you believe that?
So it's not a gish gallop.
Yeah, you. So then, why would you take so long?
If you think explaining a concept in depth is a gish gallop,
okay, we can skip the whether it was a gish gallop question. I don't.
So I want to respond to this idea of. I think actually it is a point that I might have to take about some of the anti-Zionists. But there's a massive difference between having a principled stance against ethno-nationalism and being anti-Semitic. So you might be against ethno-nationalism and love Jews and be Jewish, etc. So that's one distinction that I think we need to make. I think because of history and because of the failures of the German left and the existence of the Holocaust, obviously in a modern system we're going to have a Jewish state, and I think we should accept that and allow that to happen. But that state cannot be allowed to commit war crimes, to develop, to take territory, to have 90% of the world saying they're committing war crimes. It's just absurd. So I do want to draw that because I could see people saying, well, yeah, anti-Zionists, these organizations are anti-Zionist, but they're against ethno-nationalism, which is a much different stance, and the argument would be more about implementation there. And I personally am I think it's a tragedy that Jewish people need a nation state to feel safe. That's a historical tragedy, but there's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube.
I also
Do you
don't
think
think
it's
that
a
nation state's
historical
done
truth?
good at
Hold
keeping
on. Or
people
do you think
safe.
it's a historical and modern truth that Jews do need a state of their own, do need Israel to be safe?
I think that Jews could be safe. I don't believe that's the case, but I understand why so many people believe. I think there could be a liberal world order that protects all religions, and that'd be fine.
Based on
history, based on the situation in
based on
Ireland.
history, you think that
Yes.
Jews could be
Yes.
safe without
Absolutely.
a homeland of their own?
Absolutely.
So
People made the same arguments about Egypt and Israel. There's no reason that there can't be peace between Arabs and Jews. That's perfectly fine. This myth.
Yeah, no, of course. No one said that there can't be peace between Arabs and Jews.
So
the same way that there can be peace between Europeans and Jews. But that doesn't mean that Jews are safe as minorities in these nations.
Yeah, they were safe in Spain for many years.
Until?
Safe in America?
Safe in America, yeah. They're safe in New York City. They're safe in Squirrel Hill and in
So
America.
America is an anomaly in the history of the Jewish experience, and most Jews will tell you that today in 2025 is the most hostile that America has been towards Jews.
Okay.
So the idea that Jews are obviously safe everywhere,
it's also all the
especially in
minorities,
America,
though.
it's not going to
Muslim.
resonate.
Islamophobia.
Sure.
Listen, I've been saying Islamophobia is kind of in the same pace of where like pre-Nazi Germany was, in the fact that we're talking about like getting rid of these people. They won't assimilate. Their religion is different. Their languages, they bubble, like so many lists. And I feel like it's the same rhetoric that was used against the Jews, and we're doing it against the Muslims right now. Right. And like, if the idea is that like the Jews needed a nation state to be safe, I'm sorry, the Middle East was the absolute worst and proven to be the worst location for you to go build a nation state. Now, you said it wasn't colonization. Now, according to
and where Jews
okay, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. That does not work. They were from there. Sure. But then you had a mass migration of people to take over another people. That's all they're going to see. So regardless of how you see it,
they were buying a lot of barren land
and displacing the people from when they were buying the homes and when they were buying land, and people were leaving and they weren't letting Palestinians work and so on and so forth. Like the tropes go back and forth. All right, you guys didn't buy a desert and build the desert.
The timeline is relevant. The timeline is certainly relevant. Yes, it's absolutely relevant, because the displacement wasn't happening until violence was happening and war started. The actual displacement of Palestinians from their villages, because Israel was attacked by every neighboring country and army.
Because you had a random country being propped up in the middle of the Middle East, claiming to be a Jewish ethnos. That's
being
a bad
established.
thing. The people aren't going to accept that.
The return of the Jewish people. Well, listen. By the way, I think it's totally
claims of safety
fair.
That's not like smart, right?
Like super. The idea that it's not just safety, it's safety and needing your own protection. That was the justification for the Jewish self-determination in the land of Israel. It's not being able to rely on your host nation to keep you safe. This has been a fact of Jewish history since.
But they relied on the host nation to keep. But they relied on a completely different other host nation to take place of another host nation, and this was supposed to be.
No, it's not
like
a host nation.
safety?
That's the point. It's a country for and by Jews. And again, they were going to meet the other Jews who were already built on largely empty land, again, until the actual displacement of Palestinians, starting mostly towards the beginning of the Civil War.
So they lived in the desert until they displaced the people that were living on the land, and then there was war.
You realize that most of the country was swampland, right? Not desert.
Yeah, everything was swamplands in the desert, and yes, of course.
No, not everything, but yes, the majority of the land that the Jews were colonizing, if that's the word that we want to use, yes, was literally swampland.
That were buying out originally, and then it got to you need more than desert land, because the desert isn't feasible to you need actual things.
Actually no, because the Jews were willing to accept various partition plans that would have left them with the least workable land, but they were willing to accept it because they
I mean,
wanted self-determination.
I mean,
I think though this
once
is the
again,
trick
it's
that
like,
Hold on,
of course,
hold on, hold on.
of course,
One at a
of course,
time.
the people at the time,
Finish Ali, and then
are
we're gonna
willing
go
to
to
accept
Yuda.
whatever's given, considering they were leaving persecution from Europe, right? And so whatever the British wanted to give them, they were willing to accept. But it wasn't theirs at the time. So that, like, regardless, the people on the land are going to feel colonized.
It wasn't
upon.
anyone's. That's
Okay.
the thing. It was
I
Ottoman
mean,
land,
we
and then
got-
it was British. No, it wasn't though, and that simply does matter.
We got to give it
Actually-
to Yuda. Go ahead, Yuda.
The
Here's what I'll
majority
say
of the
is
land
that it's
was
irrelevant.
uninhabited.
It's all
All
irrelevant. The question, the
It's not
foundational.
irrelevant.
Yes, absolutely.
No, it is.
Let
We're not
Yuda make his argument.
Excuse me.
Let Yuda make his
We're not
argument. Go ahead.
debating. We're not debating the morality of the foundation of Israel. We're not debating what happened in the 1947 Civil War or what happened in the 1948 war between Israel and the 5 neighboring Arab states. We're not debating any of these things. What we're debating is the nature of anti-Zionism. Anti-Zionism is an ideology that opposes the existence of Jewish self-determination. It has nothing to do.
Yes,
with
that's
the
what
acts
I'm
of
arguing
agency.
with her.
This
Is that, like,
but
to the
no,
people?
Exactly. You're trying to drive this into a detail-oriented argument about morality. You're trying to take this
What?
away from the argument over what anti-Zionism is in its essence.
I'm
Once again, this is the essential aspect of anti-Judaic praxis, which is that it seizes.
I don't
upon-
care about anti-Judaic.
It
No one's here
seizes-
saying
it seizes-
anti-Judaic
it's-
anything. I never said anything about.
That's
about
fine if you're not
anti-
able to listen to words that are more than
So-
3 syllables. But the issue is that with anti-Judaic praxis, the essential aspect of it is that anti-Zionists, anti-Semites, and Jew haters, for lack of a better term for people who existed prior to the 18th century, would take acts of Jewish autonomy or acts of Jewish agency, mythologize, demonize, and then turn those into the essential planks of their ideology. It has nothing to do, there's no relevance to what we're discussing right now if we're talking about the war. What we're talking about is whether anti-Zionism is in its essence something that is harmful, dangerous to Jews.
No, that's not what.
If you
Is
so
anti-Zionism
I'll-
harmful or
I'm sorry,
dangerous to
did
Jews?
you invite me?
Considering,
Maybe I'm
consider,
confused.
wait,
Did you
considering
invite
if
me
you're
to a debate
anti-Zionist
about
and
that?
you would want
Hold
and you
on.
want the dissolvement. Wait,
Hold on.
if you want the
Anti-Zionism
dissolvement of
versus
the nation state of
anti-Semitism.
Israel, and then that's
This is
considered
what we're
harmful to
debating.
Jews, then that's just anti-Semitism. No, that's not how that works.
That's A, that's not what I said. But B, again, I'm just a little confused. Wick. Did I agree to debate the history of Israel, or are we debating the nature of anti-Zionism?
Anti-Zionism versus anti-Semitism is a topic.
So,
of the
And
day.
the
I
opinions
don't
of
know
the
why you're
anti-Zionists
talking-
would
I
come
don't-
in.
I don't know why you're talking about the history of Israel then if we're discussing the philosophical framework of Jewish emancipation.
Because I would be
Hold on,
against
just let me
the
clarify.
framework and the
Let
building.
me clarify.
Of it. Okay, go
The
on.
reason we're talking about Israel is because that is the modern manifestation, right? It is the
I agree, but
and so you understand that that probably is going to be something that people talk about because it is, as you said, the modern manifestation of Jewish autonomy.
I mean, I agree with the last part of that sentence, but Wick, let me ask you a question.
Please.
When we're talking about America, do anti-Americans reference the founding essence of America
All the time.
for the destruction of America? And if they do you view that as a useful or meaningful discussion to be had?
Not necessarily. No, I think that they do bring it up though because if their position is that America was founded on a rotten soil and therefore cannot but bear rotten fruit, then it is something I have to contend with. I think that's wrong. I think it's a faulty analogy. I think it's a faulty way of looking at the world, but that's their position, right? Not mine. I think that let me ask you this, Yuda, and maybe this will help kind of frame the discussion a little bit better. In this idea of anti-Zionism, in what ways today do you think it directly harms the Jewish people or Jews in general?
Anti-Zionism?
Yes, anti-Zionism specifically.
Being shot
think in
down in the
terms of-
street for one.
Yeah, I think in terms of direct harms, I mean, most recently we can just discuss people getting Molotov cocktails thrown at them in Colorado or shot outside of a Jewish museum in DC. Or, I mean, you can really just think, well, if the state of Israel is dissolved, what's going to happen to the millions of Jews that live there in an Arab majority country? What has happened to Jews every time they have lived in Arab majority countries? Okay? But I think that we have to understand that, yes, anti-Zionism is in its essence, again, calling for the reversal of emancipation. It is in its essence an ideology that believes that emancipation of Jews was a mistake and that it should be reversed.
Okay, I have a counter argument to this. So, was there, question for you, Tali, was there anti-Zionism before October 7th? Yes or no?
Obviously, yes.
Yes. Has anti-Semitic hate crime gone up since October 7th? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so is it the anti-Zionism, or is it the fact that crazy people are responding to news and shooting people? It's obviously the actions of absurd far-right government that is a Zionist government in the sense that they believe that occupying the West Bank and Gaza is crucial for their safety concerns. And by what you admitted, Jews around the world, hate crimes are increasing, making them less safe. I think it's obvious. If we had peace with Palestine, similar to how we had peace in Egypt or in Ireland, the Good Friday Accords, there'd be less anti-Semitic hate crime, and that's just obvious. So clearly, anti-Zionism is, better for Jews, as I define Zionism. Now, this fringe, ridiculous, weird definition that Yuta has. If you Google Zionism, it says, just Google it, read what it says in the establishment and now the development of the Israeli state. That is the commonplace definition. There's this weird Jewish. I want Jews to thrive. I love Jews.
Yeah,
I want them to be in banking. I want them to be in government. They can do whatever they want, but they cannot.
Why do you want Jews in banking?
Because
they're good at it.
It's the
Brian, have you ever heard of Wilhelm Marr?
You think I'd hire a non-Jewish lawyer? In
That's
what
right.
world?
That's right.
I'm just curious if you've ever heard of Wilhelm Marr.
I have not.
It's just fascinating because you're actually, I mean, almost verbatim quoting him.
Okay.
If I can, I'll just read like a quick quote from him. What I intend to accomplish is less a polemic against Judaism than it is a statement of facts regarding cultural history. I, therefore, unconditionally defend Jewry against all religious prosecution, and this is hardly more possible to express this more closely than I have done here. On the other hand, I emphasize the indisputable truth. With the Jews, the Romans have forced a tribe on the West, which, as his history shows, was thoroughly hated by all peoples of the world. I mean, you're essentially just replicating the ideology that in the late 19th century Germans formed to create anti-Semitism. You're saying, I don't hate Jews. I have nothing against Jews. I only have something against this subset of Jews, which just so happens to account for the vast majority of them. And my views of the subset of Jews require me to take such extreme actions that I'm going to lead to extreme harm to all Jews.
This whole idea that you can't disagree with an ideology because a specific group of people hold this ideology is like kind of ridiculous. It's a chosen ideology.
No,
it isn't against an immutable.
But that's the problem too. It's just
like,
really the problem is. This is why I go back to saying, and I know that Yuta doesn't agree with me. But this is why I go back to saying the word Zionism is really it's counterproductive at this point, because most people, like when a Jew calls themselves a Zionist, or a Jew is called a Zionist because they won't malign Israel publicly or something like that, they don't have an ideology. There is no ideology attached to it. The truest essence of what people mean when they say Zionist is essentially someone with an affinity towards the state of Israel. Okay. And so this idea, so I agree with you. This is why it goes back to the original question is the best question. Can you criticize the state of Israel without being anti-Semitic? Yes, obviously, emphatically, yes. But this idea, yes. And so you're right, Ali. Of course, you could criticize an ideology without being bigoted against those people. I mean, there are plenty of people who make that argument about criticizing Islam, right? And while that's probably, again, it's more thorny, and there are lots of instances of people being bigoted towards Muslims when they're criticizing Islam, obviously it's something that you should be allowed to do. My problem is, if you are criticizing Islam to a Muslim, that is a coherent foundational ideology that they could defend and understand. Zionism does not have that same precision, right? Again, everyone truly does mean something different when they say it.
That is an issue.
It allows in, it allows in a lot of other things. And also, when people say anti-Zionist, I agree with you, Brian. What they mean is, I'm anti-racist, I'm anti-colonialist, I'm anti-intervention, all of these things, right? I'm anti-oppression. That's part of the problem that I think Yuta is getting at. That again has happened. It's the
Zionism's linked with oppression.
Words change. Like libertarians in the U.S. are right wingers now; they're not left wingers. Words change. Zionism means the foreign policy.
I mean, there are plenty of left wing libertarians.
I mean, they're not
but the word. But so yes, words change. But my point is the imprecision of the word. So sure, words change, but it's not like the word has changed and now we all mean something different, but very precise by the word Zionism. My point is that everyone using it basically has a different definition, whether they're calling themselves whether they're standing in support or in opposition to this thing called Zionism. But again, this idea of making the Jews
Mhm.
This is, I think, part of what Yuda was saying before, that this is the essentially the modern iteration of Jew hatred, right? The modern anti-Jewish praxis. And so you make the Jews the worst thing that you could imagine in that society, right? So in a socialist society, Jews are the evil, conniving capitalists, right? In a capitalist society, Jews are the evil socialists, right? In an anti-racist, liberal, modern society, Jews are the racist. In an anti-colonial society, Jews are the colonizers, and they are seen as the chief. It's like in a society that's anti-white supremacy, Jews are the whitest and the most supreme. In fact, Jewish supremacy is even more nefarious than white supremacy. And so it is the double standard that is applied only to the Jewish state that, again, does not get applied to other states that are far more violent and would be offensive to those very same sensibilities. So Brian, you said that you are an anti-Zionist because you are against ethno-nationalism. So what other countries do you actively campaign against?
Well, from an ethno-nationalist perspective, I don't
Correct.
feel that
Yeah.
there's no current global conflicts where hundreds of thousands are being. If Japan started colonizing
Right, but
China,
you said it's on the basis of ethno-nationalism, not on the
no,
basis of
that's not.
war
That's
crimes or something like that. And again, and
no,
if your complaint is war
no, no,
crimes
no,
and
no.
violence, then
You're
there are plenty
you're
places much more
Yeah,
violent than
absolutely.
Israel.
Absolutely. So when I brought
So
up
what
the
other countries are you
ethno-nationalism,
Well, let him
actively?
answer. Let him answer the
What else are
question.
you
Go
an
ahead.
when I
activist
brought up
against?
that, you're misrepresenting my point. When I brought up the ethno-nationalism, it was about the question: would organization like DSA want a one-state solution? And that would be because of a principled stance against ethno-nationalism, not because of a hatred of Jews. So that was the point about
So
ethno-nationalism.
what other So what other country,
There's
even just
no
in the Middle East, what other country are they standing firmly against ethno-nationalism for? Because there's
whatever
sectarian
ethno-national.
violence, right? And ethno-religious violence happening all over the Middle East. So what other countries are you taking this
What
firm
examples
activist
of
stance against?
where is a country in the Middle East invading their neighbor in the name of we need to protect our racial identity? Where is that happening? If I missed
Better
it,
in
Where is
Syria right now
Israel?
with the Druze.
What?
yeah, I'm against I love Kurds. I want Kurds to have
Sorry, I didn't say Kurds. I
self-determination.
said
She
Druze.
said the
Druze.
Druze.
Druze. Yeah, I'm not aware of that conflict.
Syria. Well, are we
That's
talking
You're not
about Syria?
aware of what's
You're
happening
talking
in
about.
Syria.
You're talking about.
Well, go ahead.
You're
Yeah,
in
it's
the
some. He's saying there's someone else invading into Syria, saying that is like a Druze from another country, which now the Israelis are starting to go into Syria for the defense of the Druze people, because they got to defend minorities across their borders, except for the ones on the other side. But yeah, like he's saying, like that's happening within Syria, to Syria, by Syria, like that's its own thing.
So that makes it okay.
ludicrous. Excuse me. That's a
Let
ludicrous
you go.
explanation. What do you mean? What do you mean when you say that's happening by Syrians against Syrians? Syria is a complete sectarian hellhole at the moment.
Yeah,
with a bunch
Does
of
this
armed
have to do
militias,
with it? No,
with a
no,
bunch
no.
of with a bunch
This
of
is
armed militias.
distraction.
that
This
also
doesn't have anything to do with what's
No,
happening.
what you just said is a lie. I mean, it's
What does this have to do with anti-Semitism and Zionism?
You
You're
asked the question. You asked the question.
No, no.
What
Hold
other
on.
conflict is happening?
Sorry.
You
Wait,
asked the question.
Yuda, let me
What
just
other conflict?
Yuda, let me just draw the straight line, though. It has to do with anti-Semitism when we're talking about Natan Sharansky's test, the 3 Ds of anti-Semitism. This is delegitimization, demonization, and double standards. We are addressing the double standards portion of how to assess whether something is anti-Semitic or valid criticism. And so we are addressing the double standards that most anti-Zionists
I wish that I had time to investigate all of the different war crimes and take a principle. Hold on, let me speak. Let me fucking speak. Let me speak. Yes, because if you look at the Associated Press, it's the main geopolitical issue. I try to read about Ukraine. I try to read about Israel.
No
it's
Jews,
a war
no
crime.
news.
Are you saying you follow it because it's cool? Like that's literally the source of your
because that's what
anti-Zionism?
that's
what you
what
just
the
said,
main.
right?
I'm an anti-Semite.
Yeah, in the United States, it's a major, as an American, this is a major geopolitical issue, less so in Syria, less so in Somalia. These are important places, but it's just not a particular interest of mine. It has nothing to do, it's a complete distraction. Yuda is running from my question, which I said, why, if Zionism is this anti-Jewish practice, why does the language as a human race that we use for Zionism now, if you Google it, why is it not what you say it is? It's it's the development of the state of Israel. You can't answer that. You're defeated on that point. So you pivot. You pivot to some
He agreed
ridiculous.
completely.
I'm happy-
He
I'm
gave
happy-
a different
let
definition
Yuda
for
answer. Go ahead, Yuda.
anti-Zionism.
Let Yuda answer, please.
If your question, at least from how I'm hearing it, is a little bit meaningless, if you can maybe reframe it. I'm not saying it is. Perhaps I'm just misunderstanding. Can you explain exactly what you're asking me? Just in slightly
Your
different words?
argument falls apart, but you have no argument.
I don't want to hear how my argument falls apart. I want to hear the question. Sorry,
Why
I need,
is
like,
your definition of
context.
Zionism so different than the contemporary understanding of it?
Why-
That's the question.
Well, I think because
Where do you
once again, we have
where do you
to-
get
yes,
off? Like, why do we get
yes,
to why? What evidence
I'm
do you have?
happy
of this?
I-
let him answer. Go ahead.
Are you familiar with endonyms versus exonyms? The idea that like people will refer to things internally, like a group of people will refer to things internally differently than they're referred to by people outside of the group. So
Sure.
Zionism is the like ideology. I'm not going to use the Arendtian term ideology. I'm straight saying like the belief that Jews ought to have a state. Again, as I said, in Israel, like that is the view of basically every single Jew that would identify as a Zionist. They may have other added elements onto that, but the necessary and sufficient qualities to be a Zionist is to believe that there should be a Jewish state in the ancestral homeland of Jews. The reason that other people don't view that is the same reason that in the 19th century, Germans thought that Jews were responsible for all the wars of the world, that no one could wage a war without Jewish permission, that Jews were the bankrollers of every conflict happening. Even though, I mean, unless do you believe that? Or would you agree that the things that people said about Jewish ideology and Jewish views had no reflection of their actual beliefs?
Like, I don't understand your question. Can you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to reframe my question.
Go ahead.
You're asking me why the way that other people who are not Jews discuss Zionism is different from how Jews internally view Zionism. And I'm asking you, do you acknowledge that in the 19th and 20th centuries, and prior in different ways, but in the 19th and 20th centuries, there was a lot of beliefs about Jewish ideology and Jewish views of the world and what Jews were up to in the world that had absolutely no correlation to reality of what Jews were doing or believed?
Yeah, of course. And I think that's
then
still
your
the
question's
case.
meaningless. I mean, you're just, it's like a tautological question. I mean, it's just meaningless. Like, why do
No,
some
we're
people say
arguing
one
over
thing and
the
other people say
definition
other
of
things?
the debate.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
Wait, hold on, Yuda. You make a good point. Yuda, you make a good point, but I actually think we could just be a little more pointed here. Brian, your definition and Yuda's definition on Zionism really don't differ. He just said Zionism to most Jews is the belief that Israel should be a Jewish state. That is very similar to the definition that you gave, Brian, right? With the exception of the continued preservation of.
Yeah.
So he's totally meeting with the definition of Zionism. What Yuda is saying is he has a different definition of anti-Zionism, which was the point that I made earlier, because I also believe that the Zionism that self-proclaimed anti-Zionists are fighting against has no relation to what Jews actually view as Zionism, to what the Jewish quote unquote project in Israel is. So yes, I think there's agreement between Yuda and I that anti-Zionism is attacking a Zionism that is different from our interpretation of it, but we're not disputing the definition of Zionism that you gave.
Why can't we just split people who are doing what Yuda is complaining about are anti-Semitic? They're not anti-Zionist. If you believe that,
I strongly
two.
disagree that they're
He has to link the two.
anti-Zionist. They are precisely anti-Zionist.
And anti-Zionist is anti-Semitism because you can't have anti-self-determination for Jews on that land without being, convinced of the fact that they were the global world leaders and that's what they're doing today.
So there's this like weird.
No, Yuda said
Anti-Semitism is the racial and scientific belief that Jews are a lesser species. That is what anti-Semitism is. So no, I don't believe that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Yes,
but are you saying, just for my clarity,
Yuda,
Yuda,
look at all the research.
Just for my clarity, so I understand what you're
Yes.
saying, you are saying that it's not anti-Semitism, but it is a form of Jew hatred.
It's an anti-Judaic praxis. It is an
So-
ideology that advocates actions in the world that are directly and in their very nature harmful to Jews.
But now there's another word for Jew hatred, which is you can be anti-Semitic and anti-Zionistic and still be, I guess, a Jew hater who what is being critical of Israel then if not anti-Zionistic?
You can just be critical of Israel.
It's
You don't
being
have to say
critical
that
of
Israel
Israel.
shouldn't exist.
And okay, so what if you don't think Israel should exist in the way that it does?
Then you are denying specifically and exclusively Jews the right to self-determination. It's the latest.
Really?
form of
Okay,
Jewish
so are you
exclusion.
anti-Native
Jewish
American?
exclusion
Are you
in
anti-Native
Europe.
American? Are you anti-Native American? Are you anti-Kurd? Are you anti-Armenian?
movement- is
Are
there
you
a
anti
movement
every
among
single
Native
displaced
Americans?
people who would now have to get their land back because or do I have to specifically be for this because am I now anti-Kurd because I don't really care if the Kurds get their land back or not, or that's not up to me. I didn't do anything about that, so why do I have to care about this specific person?
There's a difference, but you don't. But that's exactly the point. You're making the active stance to be anti-Zionist.
Wait. I have a specific reason to be anti-Zionist. I'm Lebanese. I've had to escape bombs from fucking Israel to leave Lebanon to go into Syria. I've watched houses be decimated. My aunt's houses have been blown up. My uncle's houses have been blown up. My personal house. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. I have a specific reason. It's not. I'm not just some random American sitting here like, oh no, Israel bad because the Jews control everything. Yeah, I don't like the way Israel acts in the Middle East. I think the Israel has done a lot of bullshit, just like the Arab countries have done a lot of bullshit. But it all seems to be the common denominator is Israel. So like, yes, I'm anti-Zionist for a different reason. So like, really I don't really. What's up?
On July 10th, when you posted, Israeli sleeper cells have infiltrated. Discussing the fact that Kash Patel is dating a Jew. What did you mean by that?
That the Israeli sleeper cells have infiltrated.
I'm just curious. If you're saying that there's no connection or correlation between these.
What was the tweet that I quoted that from?
Were you serious with that, or was that a joke?
I'm never serious about that. I'll own up to anything I'm serious about. But you're gonna go ahead and go through my tweet.
And on October 7th, Ali, when when you said. Here come the cucks to support the civilians. So much hate. Shaking my head. Free Palestine. What did you mean?
What was the response to? What was the response to?
You deleted it, so I'm not sure.
I responded to my own. I retweeted my own self.
You posted a reply to your own post.
And then I deleted that post
multiple times. Yeah. On October 7th. You seem to have a lot of deleted posts from October 7th, actually.
Oh, I went through a delete spree last.
Yes, I'm sure you specifically chose to delete a bunch of tweets right around October 7th.
No, I deleted all my tweets. If you go back, my Twitter is if you go back, I think past, I want to say 4 or 5 months, I deleted all my tweets over the past.
So on October 7th, when you said, however, to say that the retaliation isn't warranted is absolutely ridiculous. What did you mean by that?
That the retaliation has been warranted.
Retaliation of Hamas against Jews in Israel.
Why is it against Jews in Israel? You make it that's the whole thing. It's not that it's Jews in Israel, okay? It's Israel in general, okay? Just like when they retaliate, it's not against the Muslims in Palestine. It's against Palestinians.
Well, then why do they say? Hold on, Ali. In Arabic, no one says Israeli or Zionist, even though there are Arabic words.
They say Yahud. They say Jews, right?
They say Jew. Yeah. Correct.
In the same way that Ukrainians would say the Russians.
Sure, but then don't be sensitive. But then don't be sensitive when Jews say that Jews are being targeted, when very explicitly in their own words, Arab leaders are targeting Jews.
Yeah. Wait. Hold up. Wait. The Jews are this is the ethnicity that you guys hold. It is not. It is a religious ethnicity that those are the people that are there. It is the ethnicity of the people. In the same way that if a Ukrainian was oh fucking Russians, I wouldn't be oh you're just anti what Anglo. If they hate the Jews in the same way that they hate the French. That's not
okay. So what was the excuse? Okay, so what was the excuse for Jew hatred in the Arab world before the establishment of the State of Israel?
I don't know. The whole world hated Jews. I don't know why. I wasn't there. I didn't push for that.
Maybe there is historical precedence for Jews needing to be able to protect.
Oh yeah, I understand. No, wait. There is a precedent for the Jews to need their own homeland. I don't disagree that the Jews deserve their own homeland or need their own homeland or whatever it may be. I just don't think the placement was good. What's up?
Ali, you explicitly did just a few minutes ago. You explicitly said, why should Jews get their own homeland if Kurds aren't getting it, Native Americans
I mean, I don't personally care.
I'm not sure how you're changing your position. It's a little confusing. Wait.
I don't personally care if you do or don't. Should you or should you not?
A concentration camp and attacked their captors. You bombed them every day for 2 consecutive years. It's just a little confusing the way that you seem to really buy into a lot of very harmful conspiracies about Jews and to co-sign quite a lot of violence against Jews. I'm a little confused.
Who are the Jews that I have conspiracies against? Do you want to?
Why are so many of your discussions around the topic relating specifically to violence against Jews or around conspiracies relating to Jewish control?
Are you saying that he's anti-Semitic? Can we just? What's the point?
It's he just wants to paint.
I'm saying he's an anti-Zionist.
So is he? Okay. What is the point? You're saying he's.
Okay, an anti-Zionism. Yeah, I opened in. I am anti-Zionist. What's the issue?
Yeah. What are you trying to prove with
these views, the views
this is purely rhetorical nonsense.
Absolutely not. The view
Waste
that
of
the
time.
October 7th attack against Israel was justified is absolutely an anti-Zionist view. The view that Israelis are controlling the American government, that we have a Zionist-occupied government, somehow anti-Zionists have appropriated
100%
language
believe
from the
that.
neo-Nazi. Of course, yes. This is another staple
Neo-Nazi
of
left.
this is another
Why? Just
staple
because I think
anti-Zionist
AIPAC
view.
buys out every fucking Democrat or every politician we have? Yeah, what's the issue with believing in
I mean,
that?
I'm actually,
What's
Ali,
wrong with
I'm
that?
really thankful. I'm really thankful you're just making my arguments for me. It's like really
What
incredible.
is your?
Usually
You
when it
don't
comes to
have an
debate, I have to
argument.
argue.
Yeah, you haven't made any argument. So
You haven't made a single argument.
Let's give it to Brian. Brian's trying to get in
Yes.
here. Let's give it to
Yes.
Brian. See what
I'm
Brian
gonna
has to say.
change the direction. So I think the religious stuff, I think it's ultimately a mystification. I think what needs to happen for peace around the world is we need a liberal forces in Israel and
Start with the
Palestine.
Arab world.
All right,
Arab
just
world.
can I clarify the start of the sentence? You said for peace in the
No.
world. I just want to understand the beginning of the sentence.
Just in,
You
just
said
in
for peace in the
general.
world.
We can focus on Israel and Palestine.
But I just want to understand where the sentence is starting. The sentence started with for peace
I
in
think
the world.
in
Right?
general, as a general kind of deductive principle, when the many come together and fight for their interests against the few, peace will follow that. So elites in Palestine and elites in
Many
Israel
against the few. That's
this
peace.
yes, have the same interests. And solidarity between working class people in Israel and Palestine is the key to peace in the region. And
Do the elites in
Netanyahu-
Israel live in billion-dollar homes out of the country
Well,
because
they're not
they have
friends, but they have the
appropriated all
same.
the
It's
money
just
of
the
their
bums
people?
that are
they're
I
not
don't
friends.
think the elites
They're
in
not
Israel and
friends.
Palestine have
Yes.
the same motives at
You
all.
think they have the same
They don't have
interests?
they don't have the
They
same
don't-
responsibilities or
no,
the same
no.
incentives. No.
That's not my argument. They have the same
Not at all.
interests. They might not have the
No,
same
they
Dude,
motivation.
hold on.
No,
I'm,
not at
I'm
all.
curious.
Not at
Hold
all.
on. Don't interrupt him. Hold on, please. Let
Palestinian
him.
leaders have
Tali,
an interest
please.
in the death and
Tali,
destruction of their people.
Tali, please. I'm really curious. In your opinion, Brian, what are these shared interests? Can you be more specific? What are the shared interests of the elites of Palestine and the elites of Israel? What shared interests do they have in common? Be specific.
They have, but the leaders of Israel and Palestine benefit from violence, and both economically, because of the military-industrial complex, and also because they need power. Strong men need violence. The far right in Israel are strong men. Hamas are filled with strong men. If there were feminist, liberal forces in both regions, if there was peace, those would start to grow naturally. It would look different because different cultures and religions have their own beauty. You know, it might look different. There will still be Islam, there will still be Judaism, and that will have a reflection on the movements that grow in those areas. But ultimately, the barrier. It has nothing to do with anti-Jewish practice or it's elites oppressing people. And it's just a mystification.
A group of terrorists that attacked the country next door, and then the only people that are suffering for what happened are the civilians in Palestine.
And I just want to make sure I understood your statement completely. So your view is that in order for world peace to occur and for the eschatology of your socialist ideology to be fulfilled, right, for the seizing of the means, that's exactly what you just said. I'm sorry, that's exactly for the eschatology of your socialist dream.
He's telling you what he says.
Let me finish, and then he can explain how I'm wrong. So, you said there's going to be world peace.
I didn't say anything about eschatology.
You discussed
do
you know what eschatology means?
Yes, I do. It's a religious term about the apocalypse.
It can be applied to any ideology,
I'm a materialist.
Socialism is absolutely an eschatological ideology.
It believes in a more
perfect. I don't care if you're anti-religious. I'm using the term in a secular sense. Socialism believes in a better and more perfect future state that will be achieved through some acts now. That is literally
I'm making a utilitarian argument. You're making a religious argument because you can't understand outside of ideology.
It's just a red herring. You're just trying to stop me from finishing my sentence. That's it. So you believe that I'll even take out the word. I'll take out the word eschatology if it's a little too hard for you to understand these kinds of complex concepts.
Straw man.
So if we're just
nonsense.
If that is an ad hominem, thank you. If we're discussing what you just said, so you believe that there will be world peace, that the goals of socialists will come to be, so long as the many deal with the few, and that Jews are once again denied their rights to self-determination in Israel. I'm just making sure I understand the centrality of Jews and our emancipation to your worldview.
We're talking about that.
Does your emancipation only come through Israel, and you can't be emancipated just in general?
Fascinating that you would say that, because that's actually like
So Palestinian
Enlightenment,
emancipation doesn't exist, right?
yes, Ali,
You're against that, no?
I absolutely support Palestinian emancipation, and
Where would it emancipate to?
I'm very, very hopeful, although right now it's looking a little grim, but I'm very hopeful that one day Palestinians will be able to have their own states, and
Where?
both their own states, and both states will be able to.
Where's the state going to be? Oh, where's the state going to be?
West Bank and Gaza, as it is right now.
Oh, wait. So wait. Oh, fuck. So I'm very hopeful that the Palestinians will have this little division of land here and then a split here, and we're going to call that a state.
That's exactly
not,
the state
yes,
that you're
because
willing
they
to
have
accept in
refused.
1999.
Okay, cool.
Correct.
So
And much more importantly, what you're engaging in is
so you're
exactly the form of
anti-Palestinianism, you're what is that word? What goes on? What goes on? How come you don't give Palestinians half the
I'm just
land?
going to keep talking until you let me finish.
How come you don't give Palestinians half the land?
Exact
They deserve it, right? They do. They
Hold
have the right
on.
to
One at a
determination.
time, or we can't understand anything that's going on.
Why should anyone care about your emancipation if you don't care about their emancipation?
Hold on, let Yude finish his point.
I'm just saying,
Hold
brother.
on.
Yes.
Let Yude finish his point, and then you can respond, and I will let you respond uninterrupted, I promise. But go ahead, Yude.
I promise I won't interrupt. I'll be good, Whick. So I just want to. It's really interesting that you're engaging exactly in the kind of Jew hatred that occurred during the Enlightenment,
Fuck
which was
you.
where the
How about
view,
that for Jew hatred?
Okay, that's fine. Where the view was that Jews should only receive as individuals and not as a people. That the nationhood and the peoplehood of Jews began to be denied in the Enlightenment. Now, this was of course like retaliated against as a result, because Jews began to assimilate into Europe, and then the retaliation against Jews for that assimilation was the anti-Semitism of the 19th and 20th centuries. So you're just engaging. It's really funny that, like, I guess without realizing it, you're literally just mimetically engaging in the same kinds of Jew hatred.
I am anti-Semite. Hear me roar.
I mean, you did say that Hamas was justified in what they did on October 7th.
I am anti-Semite. Hear me roar.
Okay, now we do got to let him respond to that.
Go ahead.
I don't have a response.
Yeah,
this guy, and you can't say anything to this guy because everything revolves around the fact that the Jews deserve this land, and if and anything, no one else deserves their land.
He's
apparently,
not saying,
though.
he's not. He did. Okay.
Well,
but
it is
Ali,
the only way. I'm against
literally
Jewish
obviously
emancipation. I'm against Jewish emancipation if I'm against the Jews not having Israel in the way that it stands. That is to be an anti-Zionist is to be an anti-emancipation. To be anti-emancipatory is to be Jew hatred. To be Jew hatred is to be anti-Semite. Like, it's just that's all it is. That's all it is. So, but then when I ask for the Palestinians, like, should they get their land back? No, they should get Gaza and the West Bank back. Why not give half the land back? How come Palestinians don't get emancipation? How about all the people that were displaced?
Because Ali. Okay, but so there are answers to those last questions there. So they would get Gaza and the West Bank because that is the land that is left. Israel is not going to cut up the sovereign nation of Israel to give more land to Palestinians. More land had been offered.
And that's an answer that I should accept?
Yeah, it's just reality. That's the thing.
That's
too.
okay.
That's another big problem.
Wait, so might makes right. Wait, so might makes right.
It's a completely yes.
Might doesn't make right.
Might makes right. Okay, so if Hamas was able to beat Israel, we'd all be supporting Hamas, right? Right? If they were able to beat Israel, we'd be like, yes, this is a good way to make a Palestinian state.
Ali, if on October 7th Hamas was successful, if on October 7th Hamas was successful in overthrowing the entire country, okay, they got past the kibbutz and they were all over the entire country. No, I wouldn't support Hamas, but yes, it would then be Palestinian land because again, we don't.
And that'd be
this
okay.
is an is versus an ought. This is versus ought. We don't have to think. We don't have to think that it's morally okay. Exactly, it just is. Israel acquired the land that it has through defensive wars. There were plenty of opportunities for Palestinian sovereignty, including when the West Bank was under Jordanian rule and when Gaza was under Egyptian rule. There was no talk about Palestinian sovereignty during those times because people only consider it an occupation when it is the Jews in control of the land, not when it is other Arabs in control of the land. So yes, Palestinians, if they want to have a state, are going to have to settle for less land.
You say like other Arabs as if these people aren't from the same region, and at this point in time, the Jews came from outside in. Yes, there's a different. It's an outside group of people.
If you're going to say that Palestinians are not a unique group from the neighboring Arabs, then you're going to have a lot of support in Israel because there are a lot of people who say, sure, then send the Palestinians to Jordan.
No, they're a unique group from. They're a unique group. There's a reason why that land. There's a reason why this specific landmass is argued about, right? Unless we're going to go ahead and say that there's a greater Israel plan, which I kind of also believe that there is.
The reason that the specific landmass is argued about is because it's the landmass that was given sovereignty to Jews. That is why. Because again, the actual mandate of Palestine that Britain controlled included
your
all of the state
indigeneity
of
to it,
Jordan,
right?
included all of the state of Jordan, but it was okay to have foreigners come over and then control the state of Jordan, displacing the natives who were living there, giving the Hashemite kingdom control over these Levantine people. Okay, that is, no one
Saudi
considers
Arabia.
that an occupation because it is other Arabized people who control the land and not Jews who control the land. Once again, when that area of the West Bank was controlled by Jordan, by the Hashemite kingdom, no one considered that an occupation and oppression of the Palestinian people. It's only when the Jordanians lost that land in the 1967 war that instantly people start dating the occupation to 1967. Literally nothing changed except for that.
One-time thing, which is that
What did
I'm
you
just
say?
trying to keep track of all of Ali's like dog whistles for Jew hatred. The idea of Greater Israel is just quite literally like a conspiracy theory on the level of like the Protocols of Elders of Zion. It's very popular in the Arab world, very popular in the Zionist world, and it's the idea that Jews are plotting to take over most of the Middle East. So I just, again, if we're just like tracking the like engagement with various dog whistles and various
land
like, very mimetic forms of Jew
land by
hatred, they're really
land.
doing well, Ali.
I'm great at it. At least I do it with a camera on, you know?
Cool lighting.
Okay, wonderful. We're
Bisexual lighting.
But oh yeah,
I
fucking
love it.
beautiful, Bessa. Thank you for noticing, Tali. I'm an ally.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Is there what is the end result of all this? So we have after October 7th, the spotlight on the Israel and Palestinian conflict in the Middle East. That's something that has been kind of grabbed on by a lot of groups and things like that, and a lot of Americans care deeply about it. What do we see as kind of the end goal here for both groups? Like, I guess I'll start by asking you, Yud, what do you want to see change? What would you like to see change in how people talk about this and how it's addressed and these things? Like, what to you would look like a non-anti-Zionist defense of Palestinians?
That is a really good question. I'm really happy to answer it. I think that most fundamentally, what I would love is if ignorant Westerners could stop rewarding the most maximalist and radical people within this conflict, if they could stop creating an incentive structure that literally only creates more violence and more conflict and that gets us nowhere closer to a solution. I would absolutely love it if the idea that Jews are just going to pack up and go back to Poland could just be dropped, because it's never going to happen. Israel's a nuclear armed state. We are not going anywhere. So as soon as we can just accept that Israel's there to stay, then we can actually start working towards emancipation for both peoples. It is an injustice right now that Palestinians do not have their own government. It is an injustice that they do not have the ability to make their own decisions as a people. That is a massive injustice. And until we're able to deal with the insane radicals that have hijacked the Palestinian movement for the last century, we're not going to be able to get anywhere closer. You know, people constantly talk about blowback for Palestinians, that everything that happens to Israel is just a result of the insane depravities that they've committed against Palestinians. No one talks about blowback in the other direction. Israelis have been radicalized for over a century by incessant terror attacks. Until we get rid of these radicals, until we stop rewarding radicals on both sides, not just on the Palestinian side, we're also rewarding radicals on the Israeli side. Until we stop rewarding radicals, it's going to go nowhere. But you know what? The truth is that people like Ali, they like the conflict. It gives them something to talk about. It gives them a cachet among their friends because he has a special connection to it as a Lebanese. Brian, as well, as a Westerner, he loves this conflict. He loves Arab blood.
I love the conflict.
He loves Jewish blood. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Why?
You both love it.
Why is
gives
it
you something to
that
talk about?
you
It
love
gives you
Jewish
something to be
blood?
Like, you need to be talked to like more.
Yeah, look at these
You guys
accusations being
reward-
thrown.
Absolutely disgusting.
Absolutely
Yeah, I'm good on listening to this guy,
Wick.
Wick.
Yeah, shut the fuck up.
I'm good on listening to this guy because this guy just wants to throw around accusations and big ass words. Turn your camera on, let people see your face if that's what you want. Like if that's like you're such a. Anyways, no, that's I don't love talking about the conflict. The conflict actually affects me.
That's actually also what you called the Israeli civilians that died on October 7th. Also on another.
Is that what I said?
Yes, it is.
Go through. Can you go ahead? Read every single one of my tweets, please. I'm waiting.
I mean, we can just go through. There's so many. You know, it was actually.
Go ahead, please go through. That's what we came here to discuss today, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, I do want to hear from Brian.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian. We
My
can.
turn? So what I want to happen?
Yes.
So the kind of my intervention today is to try to point out that the conflict between Israel and Palestine is perpetuated by class interests on both sides. And it's special and rooted in a historical trauma of World War II that makes the geopolitical situation really difficult. But ultimately, coalition building for peace and pouring our money into as Westerners. It's democratic, pluralistic voices instead of nationalist extremism. And especially, I want the left to focus more on building the Israeli left, because solidarity between the Israeli left and the Arab left, I think, will be transformational for our world. So that's the point I want to make.
Okay.
The Arab left where?
It's everywhere. I mean, there's
He's talking about the
pluralistic
PFLP,
feminism.
I'm guessing.
No, I'm not. There's tendencies of feminism and pluralism everywhere in the world. They might be marginal, and it's one of my jobs to map them out and try to support them.
What is?
I agree. Solidarity between left-wing movements in America and in the Western world with left-wing movements in Israel would be good. But again, unfortunately, anti-Zionism doesn't allow for that, because one of the major planks of anti-Zionism is anti-normalization, right? Which is the idea that you cannot even talk to Zionists. You cannot communicate with Zionists. This is where BDS comes from. This is where cultural boycotts come from, and academic boycotts, right? Where even regardless of the institution, even if the researcher is willing to come without their institution name attached, we need to reject anybody who is part of this settler colonialist project, right?
In hopes of what?
I agree with you. It would be good if the American left had any sympathy for the Israeli left, but they don't. They see them as just as evil. I mean, we can look at the ContraPoints freak out to give us some light here, right? ContraPoints came out saying it's a genocide, it's horrific, saying all of the things that likely Yuda and I here would not agree with. But because she said the maximalist approach to wanting to dismantle the state of Israel and labeling every person with some affinity to Israel as an evil Zionist who you can't speak to is has brought us nothing but continued suffering and a political dead end. And she has been harangued for that take. So Brian, I do think, I'm sure that there is research to back up what you've been saying here, but actually your presentation of anti-Zionism is actually very detached from what the modern practice of anti-Zionism actually looks like. And I have a book that I think you would enjoy. It's written by Dr. David Hirsch. He's a sociologist from the UK. His academic tradition is a socialist tradition, and he wrote a book called Contemporary Left Anti-Semitism. And he talks about contemporary left anti-Semitism, obviously, but he also has a chapter on anti-Zionism and a chapter on Jewish anti-Zionism, and I think you would at least find it interesting.
Yeah, I'll
Tiny
definitely
thing to
check
add, Tali.
Appreciate
I really love the fact that boycotts were also a essential plank of the German form of anti-Semitism in the 20th and 19th
Yeah, we're
centuries.
Nazis. We get it.
I'm just letting you know. I'm just, if we're looking, if we're
No,
just tracking
hold on.
the
Essential
my
to you
God.
boycott. It's
So
essential to
you
you
guys
being
are
a
not
fucking
Nazis.
Nazi.
Hold on.
Jesus,
No.
boycott.
Bro.
I'm gonna intervene. I'm gonna get in the middle. So this is where I think all of these I'm very reticent to call people anti-Semitic. And this is why I started with, I think even if a lot of anti-Zionism is functionally anti-Semitic, I still don't think most of the people who are being functionally anti-Semitic are motivated by hatred of Jews. I want to make that clear because it's something that I actually firmly believe. However, to Yuda's point, Yuda is coming from a school of thought that says anti-Zionism is the modern iteration of this Jewish hatred, of this anti-Jewish praxis, right? So when he says that boycotting was an integral part of the Nazi project, he is not saying you are a Nazi. He is saying these are the parallels that we draw to see that this is the modern, the reinvention of the modern.
The parallels are
anti-Semitism.
to
That
us
is the
to
point that
Nazis.
he's making.
That's the parallel. The
No, it's
parallel is
not
us to
you.
Nazis.
No, it's the movement.
This is what the
And
Nazis
this is again why I
did. This is
actually
what
don't
they're doing. I
appreciate-
think it's
he shouldn't-
ironic.
He shouldn't be calling you. No, he shouldn't be calling you anti-Semitic, but he is pointing out.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Tali,
the
I haven't called them
similarities in the
anti-Semitic.
movements.
Tali, I want to be very clear. I haven't called either of them anti-Semitic.
Sure.
I've
Said
only
that
called
we
them
He
are
interpreted it
cheering
that way.
on.
He
You
interpreted
just
it
said
that
we're
way.
cheering on children dying, so don't try
Absolutely.
to moral.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
So I mean, so functionally, you're just you're an asshole. So your ideas are wrong, but not stupid. Your rhetoric is wrong and stupid.
He speaks intelligently. It's how he gets away. He just gets to throw on the little mumble. I didn't say this. I was just saying this, but implying everything in the world.
I have not. I genuinely believe that neither of you are anti-Semitic.
shut
I
up.
do not believe that you believe in the racial hatred of Jews. I don't. I really don't think either of you are anti-Semitic.
I don't care.
I'll just say that
I
explicitly.
think this point about
Ali
the
is
boycott
enjoying playing this game this like semantic game where he's like again implying that I'm doing certain like conniving Jewy things where we accuse people.
It's
of
just
this
the
and
way
that
you
and use it as a
talk.
shield.
We avoided the
Gotta be very
entire
clear.
conversation this whole fucking time. But yeah.
Yeah, I think your sliminess is more of a character flaw. It has nothing to do with your
He's
background.
not being slimy though. This is and again, I take him at his word
No.
that he's not trying to call you guys anti-Jewish. He's trying to point out the overlaps and the tendencies and the anti-Jewish practice again that does not need to be motivated by hatred of Jews, racial hatred of Jews, ethnic hatred of Jews, religious hatred of Jews. And so again, I also heard him say something to that effect. He's walking it back now. That's not what he believes. I'm inclined to believe him. I take great issue with first of all, again, like the calling him slimy. All of this just like feeds into this idea that again the Jews are like, oh, and I know this is not what you're saying, but I'm telling you how it lands. Hold on, but Brian, hear me out. Hear me out. I'm not saying that you believe this, but I want you to understand how this falls on Jewish ears.
The Jews are
okay?
slimy. That's what they heard. That's it. Done.
I don't think that. But
it's not done though, Ali, because I'm
No,
obviously
that's what it was. That's what you're gonna say though, which is so. Which
If
like
you-
you can't say
maybe-
slimy because it
just let
falls
me
on
finish.
Jewish
I
ears. That
think I'm
slimy
pretty
is
good
this old
faith, so
iteration.
I didn't say you can't say it. I didn't say you can't
You
say it.
can,
I'm
but
telling
this is
you,
what it's going to.
And I want people to
I'm just
not
telling
feel.
you from my perspective. So let me continue. This idea that he's being slimy, again, I don't perceive it that way. He is giving you his ideological view, the way that he has mapped this out and charted this out, which is a commonly held belief by Jews. There have been several books written about this, okay? Giving names to these different types and these different iterations of anti-Semitism. That's what he's speaking about. He's really not avoiding anything. He's just defining things differently than you guys are.
I
also,
believe that-
Tali, I just want to add again, like it's just so fascinating how we
shut up.
keep
I'm
going back
talking,
into
I'm
these
talking now.
tropes.
Shut up.
The myth of
No,
Jewish
no,
stubbornness was
no.
one of the
Quiet,
essential
quiet.
was one of
Listen
the
to me.
essential
I'm
components again,
intervening
of
now.
every form of anti-Semitism. The idea that we refused to convert when it was Christians and Muslims. The idea that we assimilated
have
and
to-
maintained
just
our
real
Jewish
quick, Yuta.
character.
Yuta, we do have to let Brian go.
Yes.
Brian, go ahead.
So
And know
I think I want to
you know,
very interested in mental health, and I think that I imagine that an insult could trigger some kind of trauma, generational trauma, and I do have sensitivity to that. But if someone's going to come at me and say that I want children to be dead, I don't care. Like, go to therapy, and I hope you are healed from that. But I'm not going to allow you to use rhetorical tools that I can't use. And I wish that I wish that didn't have any kind of race, but it does. That's the pragmatics of it. Now, I do want to make a point about the tactical thing, because I actually think the ideas that Yuta is poorly representing might be interesting to engage with for me. This idea of tactics and strategy, like I think the right people on the right in the U.S., far right extremists, their anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is tactical. They don't care about this struggle. They believe that there's some kind of strange racial Spenglerian struggle that they're fighting Jews in, and that's stupid. I am a utilitarian and a materialist, and I believe that working class people coming together will benefit peace.
Can I ask you, Brian? Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you think that there is any anti-Semitism on the left? And how,
Yeah.
in your opinion, does that manifest? Can you give us some examples of where you would see anti-Semitism or Jew hatred on the left?
I think that people mistake elite interests. They see because of some biases in media, especially around money and banking. They start thinking conspiratorially and thinking that Jewish people are better at getting into certain networks of power, and their economic critique becomes overly. It gets mystified into Judaism because conspiratorial thinkers, they want to take something diffuse and complex and make it simple. Like if we could just get rid of Jews, it would all be better. It's not the case. Power is distributed. Capitalism works unconsciously through form, and so I think that people on the left fall victim to conspiratorial thinking. I think that there's weird nationalism in the Black community and around religion that's problematic, and then I think that, but ultimately, like the spaces I've been are, especially with Palestine organizing, are like Jewish Voices for Peace. Many Jewish people, every leftist space I've ever been has been well represented by Jewish people, and that's just been my experience. But especially online, I also think anti-Semitism, and again, this is probably in the points that Yuta was making poorly. it mimetically spreads online, and I think it gets a reaction out of people, and so I think that's problematic for using online tactics, being edgy and stuff like that. So it's not super coherent, but thanks for the question.
Gotcha.
Well, and you could call
ahead.
Yuta more accurately autistic than you could call him slimy, because even like he's not even the way that you just used the term anti-Semitism, that was his point, bringing up Wilhelm Marr. That's the name of the man who coined the term anti-Semitism, and he made the whole point to say that anti-Semitism again was supposed to be a modernized sort of non-religious persecution version of this anti-Jewish praxis, right? So he's even taking a step. Sure, that's a catch-all term, although
racist
it's
as
more
opposed to
complicated than
anti-religious,
that.
right? Like it's this ethnic group, not
Scientific
this
and
religious.
scientific
sure.
is entirely
Yes.
intended to be scientific and racial, and a sign
Yes.
of the development of the West and how much more advanced they were after the Enlightenment, that they didn't consider Jews to be filthy anymore for our beliefs, just for our blood.
Thank you, Tali. I won't say anything rude. I think it was bad faith, even that term you brought up, to connect me with that person, because reading the quote, very abstractly, I heard myself talking maybe one sentence, and then at the end there was some off the rails, like everyone in the world hates Jews, which is nothing that I said. And so
you actually said that about Israel, right? I think one of your first statements in this debate, yes, was that Israel has turned the whole world against us.
I never said that.
Of course.
He did say that 90% of the world thinks that Israel's engaged in war crimes. Maybe that's the disconnect.
No, that's a statistic. In the UN,
space on the global stage has 100% flopped.
Yes,
are we wrong there?
Germans really believe that.
Well, let me clarify my point.
Wait, what do you mean Germans? Wait. So, like, the face of Israel's flopped. We can see this clearly, and then this relates to Germany. How? Tell me how it relates to Germany.
It doesn't relate to Germany. It relates to the same repeating patterns of Jew hatred. That there are acts of Jewish agency or acts of Jewish emancipation are taken into an ideology. They are mythologized. They are turned into a simulacrum of the actual act. You're not discussing what's happened. You're discussing your own perception of what's happened. It's then demonized. It's then taken through multiple layers of lies, of half-truths, of obfuscation, and then it becomes a totalitarian part of this ideology. Sorry, not totalitarian. It becomes a totality of this ideology, an essential plank where each part of these mythologized and demonized acts forms the whole and forms that basis for hatred and forms the basis for exclusion. Which again, you've advocated for very clearly.
So, is there any point in time where like a country can do something, and then we judge that country for doing its thing, and then like, can it ever not relate to like the German I'm just very confused. Or is like any time
easily just say Israel has committed a war crime, and you know what? Israel probably has committed war crimes. I'd probably agree with that statement.
Most people,
The problem is when you say, I believe Israel shouldn't exist. Israel's committed war crimes. That's evidence of why Israel shouldn't exist.
That's not that wasn't the argument either way. So what you said that Brian said was that, or what Whick said that Brian said was that 90% of the world is annoyed with or mad at Israel for the war crimes. Can you repeat it?
What Brian said, near the beginning of this conversation, was that 90% of the world agrees that Israel has committed war crimes.
Okay, yeah. So where's the correlation to the German anti-Judaist practice, so on and so forth? Well, how does it connect there?
Do you want me to just repeat what I just said?
He said 90% of the world can see that Israel has done war crimes. How does that like relate to the German thing? Like, why can't that be its own thing? Why does it have to be like anti-Jewish praxis from like the German Nazi Germany party, so on and so forth? Like why can't he have his own opinion without it being related to the Nazi party? But then you're going to say, no, I don't think you're a Nazi. I don't think you're an anti-Semite. It's just you have the exact same thoughts as them, ironically. But like, and then we're supposed to sit here and be like, you're not being slimy. You're just you're being a douchebag.
It's not ironic.
So go ahead.
I don't think that you're Nazis. I think you have very different views from Nazis. I think that Nazis drew.
We just share a lot of thoughts with them.
Why not why not argue against our points? Like, why bring up the Nazi point? What's the
because
point?
We share all the same thoughts.
Yeah. So what's
like we're not Nazis?
Rhetorically bad faith.
I'm not arguing against your points. I'm arguing the fact that anti-Zionism is a directly harmful form of Jew hatred. I don't care what you say.
But it's not anti-Semitism. Because anti-Semitism is a different harmful form of Jew hatred, right?
So you just admitted that you're not here to debate. You're just here to platform.
You're here to walk us down a line, bro. That's what this whole fucking discussion was just us being walked down a line.
I want to correct the record, Wick, because you're right.
Are you a good Muslim or a bad Muslim? That's what I felt like this whole time. So, yeah, I had my heart out at 7:30. Wick, I'm outie. Thanks for having me. Brian, I added you. Tally, thanks. You to go fuck yourself. Have a wonderful night, guys.
Bye. I want to correct the record real quick, Wick, because I did misspeak, and I want to take the L on that. So what I was meaning to talk about was the UN resolution against genocide in 2024. Was it 2024? And the 2024 UN General Assembly vote, and I shared misinformation. I said 90% of countries voted. I meant to say that 90% of countries voted for. That's incorrect. 64% of 193 members voted for, and 43 abstained. 14 voted against. So that's 95% number was wrong. My point is much of the world is thinking that Israel is committing a genocide, and that makes Jewish people around the world less safe. So that's the point I really want to make.
Okay,
and
so
I apologize for getting that wrong.
Just to kind of define your point here, to kind of sum it up, is you think that due to Israel's actions, in what much of the world, or at least 64% of the United Nations, believes to be a genocide, is what is causing this rise in anti-Jewish hate crimes and things like that.
Yeah, I think because, and they agreed with me. Like, if you look, my empirical argument is that after October 7th, crimes went up. And so it's making a correlation. It's like, yeah, if there weren't genocidal actions, there'd be less attention on the geopolitical situation, and less like schizophrenic, violent, radical people they would still be committing violence, but it would be directed at other people and maybe random.
Okay, $20 real quick. Gotta make a little money. Zachary Cohen says the anti-Zionists that were here are intellectual cowards. If you can't handle someone mentioning the thought paths of historical anti-Semitism in the discussion about whether anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, then why are you here? Thank you for the $20. You can respond to that, and then we got to go to you to go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with you, chatter. You're wrong, and I'm better than you.
Fair enough. Okay, Yuda, what do you say to the idea, right, that that Israel's actions are making the world less safe for Jewish people, as put forth by Mr. Brian here?
I guess I'll first say I think that every iteration of Jew hatred has something novel about it. So with anti-Zionism, it's the introduction of like anti-colonial theory. There is a lot that's new and novel in anti-Zionism that doesn't relate to previous iterations of Jew hatred. But the idea that Jews have brought upon themselves the violence and oppression that they are experiencing is literally 2,000 years old, stemming from the blood libel that Jews were responsible for the death of Jesus, going into the idea that Jews, again, were responsible for all the wars of the world, and that we were responsible for bankrolling every bad thing that happened, and that we were trying to take over the world, or the Soviet Union and their push of the idea that Zionism is racism. I mean, at every single juncture of anti-Jewish thought, the idea that Jewish actions have brought this upon ourselves is an essential characteristic of anti-Jewishness. It's really part and parcel of what it means to be anti-Jewish. And again, like it's again what I've talked about, which is the way that this ideology incorporates a Jewish action into itself. It mythologizes it, it demonizes it, right? The call that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza is a call
Israel
that is meant
Jewish
to be
action? Yeah, like...
Well, when people... Yeah, it's actually an interesting question, right? Because when I brought up that there were anti-Zionists in the Israeli Knesset, it was Ali who said, "Oh, that they're meaningless." When people talk about, even though they represent about 20% of the Israeli population, they represent the Arabs. Most of the Arabs in Israel are if not anti-Zionist, they're somewhere in that realm. And so these parties represent them, and they represent a pretty significant part of the Israeli population. But Ali rejected that as something in Israel, right? Because when people like Ali, or usually like Brian, I guess I don't know Brian as well, since I wasn't able to see, I guess, what you said on October 7th. But at least with Ali, when people discuss this, really when they're talking about Israel, they're talking about Jews. No one says Israeli to talk about the Arab Israelis. People talk about Israel to talk about the Jewish Israelis.
Response?
Oh,
and again, Brian, I didn't say you said that. I'm addressing that. Unfortunately, he's no longer here, but Ali is the one who made that point. You did not. So I want to be clear about that.
Yeah. I think I did make a point that the anti-Zionist forces in the Kisnet, and I have only been studying this like this year, so I'm too ignorant and I'm trying to learn more. But my understanding that the anti-Zionist forces, even though they're representing a large 20% population, are pretty marginal in the Kisnet. and don't have much governing power or much
parliamentary
influence.
system. They've refused
Right.
historically to participate in ruling coalitions. Actually, I believe it was in 2021 or 2020, Tali, if you know the exact year, but it was the Bennett government actually did include, I believe it was about a year and a half, did include these Arab parties inside of it. So they were actually part of the governing coalition.
Yeah,
of
they were
Israel.
in the ruling coalition. Yeah, exactly. I just want to
Anti-Zionists,
make
to be
another
clear,
point.
anti-Zionists were in the governing coalition of Israel. I just want that to be clear.
Have you? I want to make another point because, again, I think actually, Brian, the book that I recommended will be enlightening to you. It was written around the time of the Corbyn election, and so like before the smaller war in 2021, and obviously before October 7th. But you're going to see so many things that seem novel now, seem to be post October 7th developments that are actually just a part of a decades long So, for example, like you said, the argument that Jews are less safe because of Israel, right? People see the images coming out of Gaza, they perceive Israel to be committing a genocide, and so they attack Jews in America or across the West. While I agree with this sentiment, people were out marching and looking for Jews to push around in the streets on October 7th before there was any response from the Israeli government. Sorry, I need to cough 1 second. That's number one. Number two, if you just look back again, like to any of like the flare-ups before October 7th, it feels silly to call some of them wars because obviously what's been going on since October 7th is so much more extreme and horrifying, basically. But the anti-Zionist movement has been calling what is going on in Gaza and the West Bank a genocide for at least 20 years. So this
First
idea
time I
that
saw
this
it was
is
from
like,
the
oh,
90s.
yeah, okay, there you go. So that puts it at 30 years. And so this goes back to something that Yuda was saying earlier, which is a lot of anti-Jewish praxis is premised on the idea of what Jews and Jewishness is or what Jews are doing, even if that does not bear resemblance to reality. So again, there are people out there who for 30 years have been actively campaigning that Israel was at that point committing a genocide. So which also made for people who have been following this longer than someone like you, as you admitted yourself, right? You've been interested in this about the past year.
No, just studying Israeli politics. Sorry.
Okay.
I've been
Were
involved
you an
in
anti-Zionist before
longer.
then, by the way, Brian? I'm so sorry to interrupt. Were you an anti-Zionist before you started studying Israeli politics?
Yeah, I would say so.
Just to be clear, you advocated for the dissolution of a state, like without knowing anything about that.
I never said that. I never said that I wanted.
Okay, so
we disagree. We disagree. I'm principally anti-Zionist because I'm principally anti-war. So I've been anti-war since my political development started after 9/11. And I've been in being anti-Zionist is a principled anti-war stance because by my definition of anti-Zionism, I am critiquing the development and expansion, like the Google search says. So I have a different
definition. Just real quick, because
it's like
we're
not debating your personal definition of Zionism.
Well, no. So Yuda, I don't think. Yeah, he's not using a personal definition, but I think my
You're
point
using
stands,
a personal definition.
And Brian, I wonder if you would agree. And I made this point before, but I'm just going to reiterate it now. Yeah. Your definition is completely marginal with regards to the common modern definition of anti-Zionism. Again, if you go to any anti-Zionist group, they are explicitly one state dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state. And so again, you would be labeled a quote unquote liberal Zionist based on the views that you have.
Actually, let's just talk praxis. Brian, do you support the right of return?
Yes.
Do you support a separation of states or a one-state solution?
It's hard to say because I'm not a wonk. I'm not a policy wonk. So
what do you think
morally a one-state solution.
Okay, you're an anti. So I don't know why you're talking that you're not. You're saying that you're not. That is the dissolution of Israel, right? Like you are saying that you do support the. I don't know what this game that you're playing is about saying that you don't. Like you.
The one-state solution. To be fair to Brian, the one-state solution could be Israel just eats Palestine and Gaza.
No, because
Sure.
he supports the right of return, which would
doesn't mean
involve
Fair enough,
millions of Palestinians returning, which would be an Arab majority, which means no
But
longer.
that's just morally.
a
Like, I
Jewish
don't think what you said about, like, I'm a materialist ultimately, like, that's not going to happen. So I think if Palestinians get a two-state solution, they should take it immediately. Geopolitically, like you said, you have a nuclear state. It's not going to happen, but just morally, if I could wave a wand, I would do that. But I think pragmatically, Israel will be a state, and it's just a power thing. They won.
Why call yourself an anti-Zionist?
Why call myself an anti-Zionist? Because that's my principles.
Imagine if, like,
Well,
I don't know.
because
I'm
my
gonna start
definition.
calling, like,
No.
calling
We have different definitions. So my definition.
If I like, imagine someone who supports protectionism starts saying that they're MAGA. I mean, it's if you accept like one tiny part of an ideology but reject 99% of it, why in the world would you identify as that ideology?
But I don't define anti-Zionism as the dissolution of.
I know, but that's a personal definition. Like,
No, it isn't. Google it,
the
motherfucker.
mainstream. Yes, the mainstream anti-Zionist position in just
So
about
is it-
every single anti-Zionist
Okay,
institution is
That's
that
an
Israel
interesting
should not
point.
exist.
Let's argue that. Stop saying I have a personal definition, and let's argue this point, because I think that is an interesting point. Because probably DSA, maybe the organizations I'm thinking of are DSA, maybe People's Forum. Do we want to talk concretely about organizations? You have concrete organizations that you want to look at that are anti-Zionist?
I think that's a great start.
So DSA and People's Forum.
I think in terms of like American exposure to anti-Zionism, probably the biggest exposure is going to be on college campus or for young professionals inside of like DSA networks. So it's either going to be SJP, which is basically like a DSA, which is basically a DSA extension, and then DSA itself. And JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace, is A, not founded by Jews for the most part, B, not mostly made up of Jews, and it's really like a tokenization of a tiny minority of Jews. So, I mean, really when you're talking about like JVP, you're really, I mean, it's the same as like a pro-slavery person in the 19th century discussing blacks who are in support of slavery because they think that they really need the white man to keep them in their place. Like, I mean,
overstating your point.
It's not. It is a tiny minority of Jews who are inside of these organizations.
I think that can be like
the fact that Jews is just a selection bias.
I think we can answer.
There are millions of Jews, and the millions.
We can answer
of Jews
the question empirically. Like, what percentage of Jews in America support the occupation of Palestine? We could just ask it empirically.
That's not, but that's like not.
That's
a question
hold on. That's a different question to whether they're
yes.
Zionist or anti-Zionist. The occupation of Palestine,
Also,
you could be against that and be a Zionist.
I mean, some 80, I believe the most recent polls show that some 80% of American Jews are explicitly Zionist. And then there is a large contingent that is non-Zionist. They are not anti-Zionist, they are non-Zionist, and those tend to be ultra-Orthodox Jews who, for religious reasons, believe that there should not be a secular Jewish state. They eschatologically, they only believe that the state should exist in a messianic era. And then there is a tiny, I think I saw one poll that said it was 3%. I'm not sure. It's somewhere under 5% and trending towards 1% of Jews who would identify as anti-Zionist.
By my definition, like the point you made earlier, and I forget the interesting linguistic terms you used, but we are talking past each other with definitions. So that 80% of Jewish people, I'm assuming, means, or they're saying that they want there to be a Jewish state, right?
Yes, which is the
question
necessary and essential definition of Zionism.
We disagree on that. That is our fundamental contention.
I'm sorry. There's no room for disagreement. that is, every single Zionist believes that. There is no Zionist who will identify as a Zionist who will
Zionism
say that I do not believe that Israel
movement.
That is the necessary condition to be a Zionist.
Here's a question from the chat for Tali and Yuda. Okay, $10 from Doobie to say this: what measures would Yuda or Tali support to maintain Israel's existence as an ethno-state if Arab Israeli citizens had enough children to challenge the Jewish supermajority? So just by birth, by having kids, maybe Jewish families have like one kid, and Israeli Arab families have 10. Eventually, there will come to a population where it is a majority non-Jewish. What measures, if any, would you both support to maintain Israel's existence as a Jewish primarily state?
So what most Zionists will tell you is that Israel is a Jewish state in kind, but in character, right? And so the first partition plan offer for an Israeli state would have had something like 45% of the population be Arab Palestinians. And so that would have an even quicker route to an Arab majority. And once again, Jews accept it at that point. So there are plenty of ways for a nation to be a Jewish nation, even if they don't make up the 51% majority of that nation. But I don't know. I don't know that we need to have solutions to that hypothetical right now, or that it would again even really require solutions. I mean, there are Christian countries that have ethnic and well, again, I'm saying minorities here. But yeah, I think there's in the same way that the state right now is oriented towards Jewish culture and Jewish self-determination, that could continue even with a much larger population of Arab
I want to ask
Israelis.
the same question to Yuta, though. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's really important to note that just isn't the current like demographic trends. So it's really like a imaginary question. This isn't happening. It's very unlikely to happen. We're like the only population group in the world that doesn't have declining fertility rates. I believe Muslims do as well in some parts of the Middle East, although many are actually starting to see declining fertility rates. So it's not a problem. But let's hypothetically say this were to become a problem. Personally, I really do believe in emancipation. I believe in democratic processes. I think that the most I'd be willing to do is to Israel currently doesn't have a constitution. I think it would be a good idea in that case to write a constitution that simply enshrines several aspects of the Jewish character of the country without preferential treatment to Jews, but just enshrines in the same way that the U.S. is really a Christian country. You have, Sunday is a day that you have off. It's a federal holiday around Christmas. You have all these different things. Enshrine these same kinds of protections for Jewish traditions and continuity. And if Jews are unable to maintain their demographic majority, then I guess we just don't deserve to continue. I'm not going to oppress people in my own country who are fellow citizens just because they happen to have more kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question, Doobie.
Go
ahead, Brian.
Sorry. I want to go back to this definition question because I think it's pretty thorny. Like, Yuta, do you believe that the Oxford English Dictionary is authoritative?
It's a somewhat meaningless question. Words are defined by their usage and by the usage when they're used by people that they're meaningful to. So I don't know what Oxford Dictionary says about Zionism, and honestly, I don't care. Like, Oxford Dictionary can say whatever they want about Zionism in the same way that AOC can say whatever she wants. You can say whatever you want. Like,
I have a personal definition, and you are saying the dictionary definition doesn't matter. I'm saying that the definition, weird religious definition matters,
I'm saying
but
the
not
definition
the Oxford
of the
English Dictionary.
Yes,
so that's your position. That's your position.
That's incorrect. My position
is just said that you don't care what the dictionary says.
Yes,
so your position started that I have a personal definition, which I was just reading the Oxford. So you're saying that personal definition is the Oxford English Dictionary.
No, I'm saying that when your personal let's clarify. The personal definition I discussed was your view of anti-Zionism not necessitating the dissolution of Israel. When I discussed the definition, please let me finish, and then you can tell me I'm slimy.
You don't need to finish because you're.
Hold on, hold on. Just both of you, hold on. I do know that Yuta has a hard out in about 2 minutes. I
can stay for like 7 minutes.
Okay.
I can stay 7 more minutes.
Okay, so 7 more minutes.
Finish and then I'm done.
Okay.
All I just want to say is the definition of Zionism, the only one that matters, is the definition used by people who identify as Zionists. Okay, I don't care what people who are anti-Zionists say about Zionism. So
the Oxford English Dictionary is anti-Zionist?
Again, I don't know what it says. It could be that they're correct. I'm saying that it's not meaningful to me what they say. What's meaningful to me is that
you're not participating in culture. You're just saying go debate with other Zionists. Why are you here?
Again, this is a like reiteration of the myth of Jewish stubbornness, which is present again in most forms of anti-Jewish praxis. But again,
you just said my definition cannot be meaningful, and you came to a debate with me. I don't care if you're Jewish. I would say that to anyone.
I said you can't make an appeal to authority. The definition that matters for an ideological movement is the definition of the people who have that ideology. Okay, Zionists, there is not a single, to my knowledge. Okay, I've never met one. If you can,
so we can't debate.
I would be thrilled. If you introduce me to a single Zionist who says that they are Zionist and they don't believe that Israel should exist, like I'll admit I'm completely wrong and I need to reevaluate my entire worldview. Okay, but until then, I don't care. Like the Oxford Dictionary might agree with me, they might disagree with me, but
we just have philosophical differences.
Okay,
but hold on. There's
just real quick, $10.
Right, what do Republicans?
Hold on, we got money.
Yeah, hold on, shut up, and then I'll give it to you again.
Be quiet.
Please let me moderate my panel.
I'm sorry.
$10 from Lawson Harrison. Just real quick, $10 from Lawson Harrison to say Leichenstein. God damn it, Liechtenstein, I don't know how to pronounce these words, would be very upset at you, Mr. Anti-Zionist. Thank you for the $10. Sorry, I mispronounced whatever word that fucking is.
To bridge
ahead.
this gap here, because Yuda has a particular way of explaining things, and I personally appreciate it, but I understand the frustration, Brian. There's an obvious validity to what he's saying if we just like if we use a hypothetical, even that one that we could make up, right? So if Zionism is inherently this we're calling it an ideology, right? And it's obviously a Jewish movement, right? It originated with Jews. That's obviously the origin of this ideology, right? It was are we together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
like the 1890s, I think, right?
Modern political Zionism,
yes,
not religious Zionism.
Right.
Religious
Okay.
Zionism is literally as old as Judaism.
Okay. I'm familiar with
there-
the history from 1897 or so up.
Sure. So my point being, there's an obvious truth to the fact that if there's an ideology developed by a group and people outside the group believe it to be something else, but no members within that group of people who believe that ideology recognize this other definition, then yeah, it literally doesn't matter what the people who are not part of the ideology believe it to be if it's not reflecting the actual origins of the ideology. Now, where Yuda is being unnecessarily pedantic is like the definition that you gave does line up with the Zionist definition of Zionism, and the dictionary definition that you were going to read probably also lines up with the definition that Zionists use for Zionism. But again, there seems to be something like facially obvious about the fact that if there's an ideology developed by a group and no one in that group recognizes this outside definition, that it's really not a useful definition.
I don't think so. Like if ISIS might have a definition of jihad that we wouldn't accept as jihad, right? So
well, that's because there are other
ISIS didn't develop the
ISIS
the jihad,
the
right?
term.
So we could argue that ISIS is perverting jihad, right? Because we have another foundational ideology to compare it to, right?
Yeah,
that
and I would say that
Muslim
we'd have to talk about
believe
we'd have to talk about like
means.
ISIS-jihad. Like there would be some specific subset of the
Yeah,
ideology of jihad, which ISIS has,
accept
and then
that.
you would have to talk about that specific ideology. By the way, I didn't say that I rejected the dictionary. It's just meaningless to the conversation.
That's stupid.
It's just an appeal to an authority.
How could I argue then? Like you're just I can't debate like that.
We could just
I'm
argue by
English
putting
speaker.
our definitions out there, right? Which is why it's important to define our terms, because lots of debates can happen even if people mean different things by these words. If we can just get out what we mean, then we can argue about that specific thing.
I'm happy to argue from Yuda's definition, but I'm not going to accept that my definition isn't valid.
Well, you guys have the same definition.
We have the same definition of Zionism, Brian.
Okay, then we don't have that. How can we have the same definition as
anti-Zionism? Is where you
that's a meaningless statement.
Because
you have a personal definition.
Well,
of
because
you're saying now you're trying to make a appeal to authority and say just because I don't explicitly agree with the People's Forum and have the exact.
I'm making an appeal to consensus, which is it's not a fallacy. It's a valid thing to make an appeal to consensus. There is a consensus among almost all practitioners of the ideology of anti-Zionism that ideology entails the dissolution of the state of Israel. That is what you might have your own belief about what should happen in Israel that doesn't involve that, but that's not what people mean when they say anti-Zionism.
Yeah, I think
that's not what people hear.
I would argue that. I think we could come up with a much more nuanced and sophisticated understanding of the meaning of, people might be principally against ethno-nationalism. They might be for a one-state solution. To say there's some grand consensus among anti-Zionist activists, I think is dubious.
Absolutely is. It's farcical to say that there is a consensus.
Okay, then prove it. Prove it. What's your evidence? Prove it. Show me.
You want this
vibes?
The vibe? You're welcome. No, you're welcome. We can just go to literally Google anti-Zionist organizations and just go through every single one of their charters.
Anti-Zionism and looking at the Oxford English Dictionary. So to me, that's consensus.
That's an appeal to authority. I'm talking about an appeal to consensus. You have to look at what actual practitioners of this ideology say. I know that's what a personal definition is.
No. So are you saying that the Oxford? So your argument is someone who references the dictionary instead of somehow mapping sociologically in this kind of weird, arbitrary way. You're just saying, oh, this is what they think. You're saying that the latter is superior to the former.
We were at the time crunch here, gang, and I'm going to have to
Okay,
throw
okay.
a flag on the
I'll back
play.
off.
I want to give each of you a chance to give closing thoughts and tell people where they can find you. And so we're going to start with Yuta because he has to leave first, then we'll give you closing thoughts
Appreciate
as well,
it.
Brian. And then, as
First
always,
thing I
me
just
and
wanna
Tali
say-
will talk
oh.
about this after we move you guys off. But go ahead, Yuta.
Brian, I don't think you're slimy. I don't think you're an asshole. It seems like you're a little bit misguided, and I guess you've only recently started learning in the last year, like in depth about this topic. I'd really recommend you look into like anti-Zionism, like in terms of the organizations and the practitioners, the people who actually believe it. That's what ideologies aren't, like words. They're not just definitions, they're practices, they're things that people believe. So you have to look at the believers. You can't talk about Judaism or Islam without talking about Jews or Muslims. Like it's meaningless to talk about Islam if you're not talking about what Muslims practice. So it's the same thing with anti-Zionism. You have to look at what the people say. In terms of my overarching, I guess, summary of what I believe, I think that the Jewish question in its essence, which again was the start of like the modern version of anti-Semitism in the 19th century, I think it really perfectly encapsulates what the anti-Jewish praxis is, which is an Arendtian ideology that's harmful, that believes that Jews are harmful to humanity as a whole, and that views that Jewish emancipation needs to be reverted. So in Europe, that meant taking away rights from Jews when they received them after the Enlightenment. And now in the 20th and 21st century, that means taking away the nation state of the Jews that they managed to achieve in the 20th century. So I don't care about anti-Semitism in the modern day. I think it's largely irrelevant. What matters is anti-Zionism. Anti-Zionism is the most modern and the most widely held praxis of Jew hatred. And so I don't believe you're an anti-Semite. I don't even believe that Ali, although many Arabs are anti-Semites, they do have like these, they did take in this Nazi propaganda in the 20th century, so many are anti-Semites, but many of the Western views on this really just relate to anti-Zionism, which is my basic view, that it's anti-Zionism is what we should be talking about. I'm not going to argue that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is itself a hate movement.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Check him out. I got a link to his Twitter if you want to follow him there. Yeah. See you guys.
Thanks, Brian. I did enjoy our
Yuta.
conversation.
Okay. Brian, go ahead.
Okay, so I think, do I want to address rhetoric? I think I want to address rhetoric a little bit, but stay back off from the personal stuff. I think that, what do I want to say about rhetoric? I think that, yeah, it's inflammatory to use extremely charged words and labels, and ultimately they're thought-stopping cliches and just unhelpful. And I think I'm dubious of people who utilize those kind of tactics and then get really upset when their people match their energy. So I'll just say that about the rhetoric thing. But now I want to talk about like the ideas, which I really like. I think my main point that I wanted to make is that the battle really isn't between nation states and religions. Elite rich people on both sides are benefiting from the war. There's Zionists who are mystifying their political survival as the survival of Jewish people everywhere to benefit their ends. And I think there are Palestinian nationalists and religious extremists who are framing resistance as anti-colonialism instead of elite control of a religious elite. And I think we should fight that. And there's a hidden economic reality. Settlement expansion benefits, contractors and real estate people and not average Israelis, and endless war benefits arms dealers and not grieving mothers. And so I'll end on that.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. It was really fun.
Of course. You can find a link to
Thanks,
his
Tali, for
Substack.
the book suggestion. I'll read it.
Sure, you can find a link to his
Whick,
Substack.
can I?
Yeah. Do they need to be here for that though? For your own closing?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
I want to round one thing out. Yeah, while they're still here. So I hear you, and again, I think I've been trying to explicitly throughout this conversation to not just tiptoe, but really to bridge the gap. Because again, I really don't believe that you, just like Yuta, I don't believe that you're anti-Semitic or that you hate Jews or that that's motivating you at all. I don't think it's fair to say that it's a thought-terminating cliche when he says anti-Zionism is inherently a hate movement or an anti-Jewish praxis, because I mean that is the topic of the conversation. He's explicitly choosing not to use the word anti-Semitism because of the specific definition of that term, right? And he's saying that anti-Semitism is one iteration of this anti-Jewish praxis. He's got a lot of words there, but he's essentially just taking the affirmative stance in the debate. So it's not necessarily a thought-terminating cliche. That's literally his stance, right? That's his view of what anti-Zionism is. It's another iteration of an anti-Jewish hate movement. With regards to anti-Zionism, almost exclusively meaning the dissolution of the Israeli state, I think organizations are not as explicit, so they might not be calling for literally, right, like we need a one-state solution, or saying, the colonial state of Israel must fall, even though you will find that language pervasive throughout anti-Zionist movements. But most of them will simply refer to the right of return. They'll refer back to the UN resolution, I think it's 194. Any organization that is calling for right of return for Palestinians into mandatory Israel, into Israel proper, is calling for the dissolution of Israel, because that it is no longer sovereign if it doesn't get to control its borders and who is allowed immigration and things like this. So that's one give. So for example, like BDS, the National Movement for BDS, that's clearly listed on their website, right? That their demand is for the right of return according to UN Resolution 194, which is not actually binding and would only really qualify for return to a Palestinian state. But if you see an organization using that resolution to refer to right of return to sovereign Israel, that is using different words calling for the dissolution of the Israeli state. So that's something that you can look for if you're looking at these different organizations.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll
With
definitely chat
that,
with people.
I will let the guests go. Have a
Hey,
wonderful.
don't forget to pitch my stuff, Wick. I know that got interrupted. You know, I have a very important Twitter.
It's on the
a
YouTube
very important
description.
Substack.
You can go to the
Okay, good.
Substack. The link's there.
And
Click on
subscribe and like to Whick TV and check out next week's iteration of the Whick and Tali show.
Sure.
Best political place ever.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Brian. Very kind.
Okay. It was very kind. What do you think overall? Come on, give me your opinion. How did it go? First of all, let me read a couple super chats. $10 from Doobie to say, if we're giving book recommendations, I think everyone should read The Empty Wagon by the great anti-Zionist Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. I don't know if I pronounced that word right, but Yaakov, I don't.
Didn't, but it's okay.
That's okay.
Yaakov.
Yeah, Doobie, look, pronunciations is my Achilles heel. $5 from Doobie to say, if Tali thinks Israel can exist as a Jewish state even with an Arab majority, what's the issue with Palestinians having a right of return? And then, if you want to answer that, you can. But I'm just curious how you think it went.
Sure. Well, I'll answer Doobie directly. There's a difference between sovereign's not the word I'm looking for. What's the word when you are naturalized, essentially citizens of a country, people who have been living there generations, right, and their families expanding, and allowing for the return of an explicitly hostile foreign group, which is what Palestinians in diaspora returning to Israel proper would be. Again, that's different from the long-established Israeli Arab population simply growing in size. And again, they don't, and allowing populations to naturally grow within the country does not affect the sovereignty of the nation that allowing for unlimited immigration would have. It's not the same effect. What did I think of this? I always have fun, Wick. I love the Wick and Tali show.
Is it always fun for you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
It didn't turn into the trial of Tali. Okay, so that's different
was the first.
than normal, right? So we have Pac the Man saying, "Not this bitch again." I'm assuming he's referring to you, but I'm not sure. It could be me.
He's probably talking about you.
Maybe, right? But it's true. Every time Whick TV comes live, Whick is there. He's true.
Always there.
Crazy.
So annoying.
But I don't know. I think that this was a frustrating conversation for a few reasons. I do think that there's a little bit of a failure to kind of recognize what Yuda was saying. But on Yuda's end, I think he was needlessly acidic. Needlessly not acidic, venomous. Needlessly venomous, okay? Right? He was needlessly hostile, and I don't think he had to be for this conversation. I think it hurt his points overall. I think it would be much stronger without those specific ones. You don't have to tell people specifically what you're leading to. Just lead it there and let the audience make their conclusions on their own, in my opinion, right? Maybe I'm just overestimating my audience here, but I think they can figure it out. You don't have to point it out. I do wonder I do wonder though the answer to certain of his questions. I do like how he came at the topic, and I like the appeal to the historical kind of parallels, and I think that's very interesting to kind of see anti-Zionism not so much as anti-Semitism, but as just the newest iteration of a way to hate on Jews, basically, the newest way to, hate on them, right? Hate on those guys, right? And I do see it. I see that there are a lot of people who have kind of bought into this idea that Israel is uniquely evil in its ethno-nationalism and its warmongering, and I just don't see that as unique. It's bad. Don't get me wrong. I think its warmongering specifically is bad, but is it unique? No, I don't think it's a uniquely evil thing.
Yeah, and I don't think that was reckoned with, and I don't think that's ever really reckoned with. And Jews or Israel supporters or sympathizers or whatever get accused of whataboutism when they bring up other nations. But I do think it's fair to establish this tenet of why people feel that anti-Zionism is a bit anti-Semitic, right, in its nature, even if not in its motivation, is the double standard that only seems to be applied to Israel, because people talk about having these principled opposition to Israel, and I don't even deny that it's based in principle or based in politics or based in ideology. Again, I do think that's accurate, but they seem to only really hold that principle for the state of Israel, and there's often an incuriosity even of like where else this might be happening, even if it's happening like 5 minutes essentially down the road from Israel. And so yeah, the disproportionate amount of energy and time that is spent demonizing Israel, as if it's unique in that, like you said, Wick, it doesn't make war crimes good, but it's not unique. And I think that's the thing too, is like less people would have less Jews, less Zionists would have a problem and would feel this hostility if they felt that people were actually being principled. So, like using Thomas Massey as an example, that was always someone that I pointed to as an example when some Jews and Zionists would get very sensitive and accuse members of Congress of being, anti-Semitic or anti-Israel, let's say anti-Israel, if they would vote against like Iron Dome funding or something like this. For many of these people who would talk about wanting to limit foreign aid or stuff like this, they only ever seemed to actually act on it when it came to Israel. But someone like Thomas Massey, he was principled across the board, right? He was against foreign aid in all of these cases. So if there's, I've never actually met someone who's against ethno-states and holds that line cleanly across all of the ethno-states in the world. But if that is actually someone's position, then obviously that's not an anti-Semitic position or or a position based in anti-Jewish praxis. That is not a term that I was familiar with, but I knew what he was getting at.
It's a good term. It's useful. I think it's useful because it delineates the different types and the different manifestations of how these things work out. This is a little bit of an aside. It is related though. Is I think for either the next one or maybe the one after of the Whick and Tali show, we need to get you in a conversation with Straighter Aid on this show. We do. I think that you guys are like, you guys even look like each other. To like, you're whiter than her, but you have glasses and that the same kind of structure, the same kind of look.
Definitely wider than her. This is true.
Yes,
Wick.
this is true. But yeah. I would like to, because you are both also very antithetical on this topic, and I would like to see you both kind of engage in a discussion on Israel-Palestine. I wonder if we could set that up. Chatters, dear Wickers in chat, if you guys have like influence to Straighter Aid and you want to,
well, I could just ask her.
Yeah, you could just ask her. See if she wants to come on next week.
And
women in glasses all look alike. Listen. Yes, that's true. They all, I can't tell the difference. Okay, they're just the same. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of. Sure, I'm open to it. Ideally,
no, if you're
like
not,
a few
tell
weeks
me, right?
From now,
like
a little break.
If you were...
No, I am open to it. I'm very open to speaking to Straighter Aid. I think I think she's a
But-
cool and smart lady, even though I disagree with a lot of the things that she says. I think she's very smart and very thoughtful. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think one thing that this highlighted for me, this conversation today, is just like it's a painful, I don't mean painful emotionally. I mean like cognitively painful experience sometimes. Like the Jews talking about this stuff to non-Jews or to anti-Zionists explicitly. It's a hard conversation. It's like sometimes, we're just like talking on completely different paths. And to a certain extent, I view my role here to make arguments, yes, but also just to like express what is a largely held position or belief amongst Jews, because I do think that is not necessarily missing, but minimized, I guess. So sure, long way of saying sure. I would talk to her about Israel. I'd rather talk to her about something else, but sure.
Well, what else would you like to talk to her about? Because, look, honestly, I think that whatever topic we put it on, it will go to that. So I'm just skipping that step, right? Like, do you disagree that if I put you on a stage with Straight Raid, that there would eventually come up the Israel-Palestine topic?
Maybe.
I see very little, very few roads that don't lead to that eventually. If I put you guys on a stage, and so why not just skip that and go straight to what you guys want to talk about, right?
Well, because I don't really want to talk about it.
What
That's
you
sort
will
of my point.
inevitably
Like, it's
end up
oftentimes
talking about. Let's say that.
Sure.
Well, what would you want to talk about? Like, so if not that, because I'm okay. Like, obviously we're a team here, right? So if you don't think that's a good episode, what would you like to see us do in the future? First of all, do you think the format's working?
Yeah, I'll just say the same thing that I always say, which is like, if anything, you just got to rein me in, which I think you do. You tell me to stop interrupting or let someone else speak. But yeah, I always find myself heavily participating in these conversations because I'm an opinionated yapper. But so yeah, I like the format. I like the conversations. I like being able to intervene as much as I like. Haha. What do I want to talk about in particular? I don't know, lots of things.
Concluding.
What does the audience want to see me?
Yeah, audience. What
talk
kind
to
of
Straight Raid
conversations
about?
and what kind of guests would you like to see on the Whick and Tali episodes? Concluding Postscripts asks, when is the channel name changing to Whick and Tali TV? It's not, because I do many other shows that don't involve Tali.
This is true.
Unfortunately, recently she's been the topic of conversation. I will say yesterday, I did not expect you to come up as much as you did, if at all. I didn't think you would be coming up at all, but Erudite decided that you were going to be kind of like the issue, and she brought it up, and that was that happened. Frozen Night.
There was someone who was
Talia and
doing
Katie
a React
talk?
stream.
Just real quick, Frozen Night. If you'd like to see that, it happened. You can go see it. It's on my live channel. You can see. It was called Bonus Content, I think. Tali and Katie have a discussion. Dr. Adam says they'd like to see Dev and Tali debate. On what specifically?
I agree, zero fucks. Give Tali a break from being the topic.
Sure. What other topics would you like to see? Like, again, dear audience, what topics would you like to see?
What was I just saying? I was just saying something. Oh, there was someone was reacting to the panel last night and started a drinking game. Take a shot whenever Tali was mentioned, well before I joined into the conversation. So yeah, I also wasn't expecting my name to come up so much. I think that's officially the most boring conversation, is like, why did Tali vote for Trump because no one likes my answer, which is ultimately I leaned too hard in the anti-woke and wanted to punish the left. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much open to talking about anything else. I will
Anything
continue to talk
but
about anti-wokeness.
Tali,
You know,
okay.
I just can't imagine people aren't bored about that right
Yeah,
now.
look, I don't know what bores my audience and what doesn't. There are certain topics which I think surely they're done with this by now. Surely they don't want any more gender war bullshit. Surely that's something that they're tired of. But every time I have a gender war topic, they come out the woodworks and I get big
They show.
numbers and all these things. So you may say or think that people are tired of Tali being the topic, but I've got to say, Tali being the topic has been very lucrative of late. So I'm okay with it, right? I am definitely fine with it. But again, it's all in what the audience wants. I think that it like beer water is saying gender topic every day. I don't know. I like a variety.
So
one of the things I do want to do with this show is have a variety of people and a variety of topics and a variety of things to discuss. Dr. Adam Refriended says, what about something fun like Tali plays Mass Effect and tries to romance Tali Zora? We are not going to play video games on this unless you guys give us a lot of money to do that. We might,
money.
if you give us both a lot of money, but just, yeah, I play video games on my own, right? I don't want you guys watching.
So that kind of reminded me, I mean, a conversation that is evergreen for me, like I said, sort of like wokeness and anti-wokeness. So maybe we could have I'm sure you've had a conversation on this already. Maybe we could have another conversation on like, is wokeness dead? You know, is wokeness really a problem? Something to that effect. I'd be interested in having that conversation. Also, on the topic of gender, although it's not the gender wars that I think people in your audience are talking about, as anyone who has followed the various trials of Tali is now aware, every time my vote for Trump and stuff comes up, I get accused of being transphobic. And for some people, this is just because I voted for Trump and I consider myself anti-woke. And for others, it's because they have like looked into, I think that they've found my old podcast, which is nicely linked in the description of or in my bio on Twitter. But maybe I could talk about the theory of autogynephilia that is so controversial and has some people still believing that I'm transphobic. You're making a face, so I take it you don't want to talk about
I'm going to be real. I have zero interest in an autogynephilia discussion.
You know what it is?
Unfortunately, AGP versus HSTS or whatever, I'm at least passingly familiar with, just because Twitch and trans issues are a thing. But it just...
Who says you're a transphobe?
Who says I'm a lot of people say I'm a transphobe, unfortunately.
Dev, because you won't let me talk about AGP.
I mean, it's just not something I mean, I guess if we must, right? It is kind of half your chance, like half the show is yours, right? So if we must, we may, but I'll leave the booking for that to you. I don't know. It doesn't strike my interest, I guess. There are so many other things we could talk about, right? Like there's constantly issues coming up politically and culturally. I do think that the idea of wokeness being dead is interesting, and we could talk about like what that means, if that's true, and what's kind of like the way forward for those type of things. I think that would be an interesting discussion. I'm also curious to see, like, I think it's almost time, and we've had this discussion before on my show specifically, but it's been a while. It might be time for another parasociality discussion, right? And to see kind of the how parasociality plays into not only streamers, but politicians as well. Trump, Biden, Mahmoud, and all these other, right? Like AOC, right? How are we as a society dealing with our politics and in what ways, what positive things are coming from that, and what negative things are coming out. I don't know. Maybe that itself is too high-minded. I'm not sure.
That's broad, but it's definitely an interesting topic. I mean, it's
Yeah.
relevant,
Dev
right?
is
For
saying
for
LOL,
like you
but I
said.
don't know what LOL means. Like, Dev, what would you debate? Hold on, Dev, you're here. What would you want to debate Tali on? If we had a Tali and Dev debate, what would that be?
People in the comments want to see us debate Dev. I don't want to debate you. I
Oh,
want you to
here's a
I want
topic
you to
of
convince
feminism.
me and peer pressure me.
Is feminism dead, or is it a failed experiment? Econo Boy says socialism would solve this. Do you want to talk about socialism? We could have Econo Boy to talk about socialism versus capitalism. I think that would be an actually interesting discussion. What do you think about that, Econo Boy?
Econo Boy, and then bring on someone else to represent the
I mean, I'm a
capitalist
capitalist
position.
I'm pretty staunchly capitalist. I'm pretty anti-communist. But
Me too, just not in a way that I would want to debate Econo Boy.
Fair
But yeah,
enough.
sure. I'm totally.
No, I mean you can veto things if you're like, I think that Econo Boy.
No,
is boring.
I'm not vetoing. I was just thinking we would bring in another person. I'm totally not vetoing. I think that's a great conversation.
Okay. I'm just very curious, right? But yeah, I think that there's a lot of different discussions to have. Unfortunately, I was kind of dissatisfied by today's discussion, and I think we could probably have this again with different guests. I am, gang, just to let you guys know what's going on next week. On Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have that History Speaks guy on. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he wants to talk on my channel about what the center-left gets horribly wrong about the Gaza issue. And he wants to criticize not only me, but other center-left liberal pundits and influencers, and why we have made a moral mistake with our takes on these things. Doobie says he'd roll Yuta in the anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism convo, by the way. That might be an interesting... That might not... I don't know if Tali wants to be there for that one, right? But she's welcome, right? But we're just talking about just different ideas. Because audience, and I want to let you know, this is your guys' show too. I want this to be something you guys look forward to tuning into, right? Like, oh, it's the weekly Whick and Tali show. I wonder what they're going to be talking about this. I'm excited for this. I want that to be a thing, okay? I want that to be something that you guys look forward to and get something out of, right? Rabid Wombat says, "What's the cut of the take?" You guys get content, okay? And in exchange, we get your money, okay? That's how this works. And speaking of, if you do want this to succeed, if you want us to keep doing this, throw some shekels in our hats, okay, gang? Give us some coins, okay? Throw some super chats into the YouTubes. We'll read your comments, right? Throw some gift subs on Twitch. All these things help. It'd be very, very helpful. I guess it wasn't a Whick and Tali show, but I am curious how you think yesterday went. I know we talked about it a little bit, but I want to kind of just talk, get a little more into it. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I'm going to read this out loud first before I lose it and forget. But Beer Water recommended a topic, the lasting effects of the Me Too movement. I think that's a great topic. That's a really good topic. Whoever said something about feminism earlier, that was actually the first debate that I did here on Whick TV. Was a debate. Has feminism gone too far? I argued yes. So you can go back and watch that if you're interested. But okay, how do I think yesterday went? Again, it's always fun to me. I think it was a fun, raucous conversation. It had all of the elements. It had the screaming, the laughing, no tears, I don't think. So maybe I guess it was missing that one element. It was obvious. But
oh, is that me or her, gang? Oh no, is that me or her? Oh no, we lost her, gang. It's the women's fault. Damn. She's gone. Are you there? Are you back?
Do you have me? Do you see me?
Yes. Okay, what were you saying? Yeah, you cut off. Go ahead.
Okay, I was saying it obviously wasn't very productive. I think that we knew that going in, right? Neither side of that debate was really looking to have their minds changed. They were really just looking to argue why they're more right than the other side.
Well, I mean, that's usually how debates go.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. I don't this constant appeal to, well, Trump won, so obviously the way that Trump operates must work and must be what we do, I think is full of what I'd call recency bias. Yes, he did win in 2024. But if you look at 2022, and if you look at 2020, if you look at 2018, he did not. And MAGA, more importantly, MAGA did not. In 2022 specifically, the DNC, and this was a controversial decision, right? But they decided that the Republican primaries, they were going to support the more MAGA side of the Republican primaries, right? So they got, and they put money behind, and they put backing behind the MAGA candidates, the more extreme candidates. And the idea behind this is that the general electorate would reject the kind of divisiveness, the extremism, the more MAGA stuff. Again, controversial decision at the time because it could have gone horribly wrong, right? It could have been like, oh, you just made it sure that there were more extremists in the government right now, right? But it tended to work. The general electorate did reject mostly, right? It wasn't a 100% thing, but it was like an 80% thing, right? Like most of the MAGA candidates that they put up, the more extreme ones, were rejected in 2022 general election, right? And so that's it's one of the reasons we were able to stave off a real big red wave in 2022. So this idea that the electorate would simply reward extremism and reward kind of this mean nastiness, I don't think it's borne out by the data. I just don't think it's true. So yeah.
Yeah, and there was a one point that maybe like should have, I mean, I don't know how much you can really hammer it, but that like maybe should have been the emphasis more, and it got lost when we kept talking, or not we, but when you guys kept talking about jokes and stuff. It's really not about the joke, even though the particular joke was, inappropriate on a few different levels. It's really not about the joke. It's about if people believe you're being serious, right? And this did come up, right? It's about if people actually believe that you have some type of contempt for these people.
Yeah,
and
people
when
obviously
Destiny
believe Destiny does, and other people who laugh at
exactly
that joke does. And it's not just the joke; it's everything around the joke, and how they defend the joke, and how they double down on the joke, and how they make it clear that this isn't really a joke, right?
Right. Well, that was like it the last time when he was when Trump was shot, right? And that guy, was he a firefighter or whatever, when that gentleman was shot and
Tony
killed.
Compentori or something. I think that's his
Yeah.
name.
He I remember again, it was like what Destiny said was jarring and shocking and whatever, but that was less of the problem of him doubling and tripling down, right? Because I remember in the aftermath of that, him basically saying, like, no, yes, he obviously deserved it, right? Any idiot who supports MAGA, who would put themselves there, right? And then he went on to say something like, if it were my own parents, I would believe they deserved it. And that, I think it was like, oh, okay, now you just look like a psychopath, like someone who's not pro-social in that way. And so I do think that really is the issue, right? Much more than just how perverted or inappropriate or violent a joke is. It really is. People think that you're being serious, right? It's the same thing with like mildly racist jokes, right? It's like it takes on a whole nother meaning.
Actual racists have ruined racism, right? They ruined racist jokes. racist. I'll be real. Racist jokes, sexist jokes are funny because you're joking. You don't actually believe this. But the problem is while we were making these jokes, there was a subset of people who were like, no, yes, that's exactly correct.
Right.
That joke is real.
Right.
And you're like, whoa, what? No, we were having fun. Like my black friends would make fun of me, call me the, cracker and things like that, and make fun of white stereotypes, and I'd make fun of them, right? I wouldn't use all of the N-word, obviously, right? But we would banter back and forth, and it was funny because we understood we had basic respect for each other. And we saw each other as humans, right?
Yes.
But again, that's been ruined because you have people who just are like, no, white people are all evil. Right? That's really true. Or no, black people are actually lazy and things like, and are actually all these rapists and things like that. And you're like, whoa, buddy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. And I see that kind of as this as well. Like it's not just the fact that it's dark humor. It's they really, really like it. I don't believe this of Soy Pill or Destiny specifically. But I do believe this is a lot of people on the left. If they had the power to actually kill the people on the other side, they would. They would absolutely exercise that power. And the same thing for a lot of the people on the right too. I'm not saying that they're innocent in this. They're absolutely not. And I would argue they're worse, right? But yeah, if they had the power to, they would absolutely implement these things. Luckily, neither side really has the power to, but I want to make sure that stays that way. So, okay, gang, if you like this show, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Anything else you want to share, Tali, before we let you go?
No, I don't think so. I'll just reiterate that book recommendation that I made earlier. Contemporary Left Anti-Semitism by David Hirsch.
Okay, gang. Remember, the next show's on Sunday, a little earlier than normal at 4 p.m. Eastern. And then I'll get out a list of content for next week when I get that. Okay, so if you have ideas, let me know. I love you all, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Wave.